morning. On behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, the Commission, Manager Fuentes, and the staff, welcome to the business meeting of the City Commission of the City of Truth and Consequences. It is now October 25th at 9:02. If you have any device on you that makes a sound that would be disruptive to this meeting, I ask you to please turn it off. Madam Clerk, can we have roll call?
Honorable Steve Green.
Here.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead. Here. Honorable Kathy Clark.
Here.
Honorable Ralph Heschler.
Here.
Honorable Joshua Frankel.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The next item is number 2, silent meditation. And in your thoughts and prayers this morning, I would like you to keep the name of Kathy Mitchell. Destiny Mitchell's mom unfortunately passed away, I believe, this past weekend. She's a longtime resident of Truth or Consequences, a businesswoman. She owned a hair salon here in town and a vital asset and member of the community. Please join me for 15 seconds of silent meditation. Thank you very much. Commissioner Frankel, could you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is approval of the agenda. I will stand for a motion.
Mayor Green, I'd like to move that we approve the agenda with the following changes. Under G, I would request that we remove number 1 for the time being, make number 2 number 1, number 3 number 2, and then move from the executive session K1 under number 3 under unfinished business, and then move the number 1, the discussion action automated meter reading discussion, move that under unfinished business as the last item in that block.
Okay. May I ask you to just change that, sir? And I'd like to jump, it's a little bit out of sequence, but I think the big item here is the automatic meter reading, is to, before we go to that, to do the quarterly report.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we can do so basically will be animal control will be first. The second will be the night sky ordinance that will be presented by Commissioner Clark. The next will be the acquisition and disposal of real property at the airport. The fourth then will be the DFA quarterly report presented by Ms. Torres, our Director of Finance. And then the last will be the automatic meter reading.
Yes, sir, that makes perfect sense.
Okay. So
I second that motion.
I have a motion by Commissioner Heschler and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. It carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is comments from the public, and please remember the 3-minute rule applies. Floor is someone's. Take this. All right, then we will move on.
One person.
I and my wife enjoy walking. Gary Woodcock,
Thank you, sir.
312 Mars Street. I and my wife enjoy walking the downtown and residential streets for an hour or so every day. We appreciate living in this friendly, walkable community, soaking in the sun and the scenery, just being out in nature. Too often on our walks, we see loose dogs. 3 weeks ago, my wife and I were attacked 4 days after returning from our previous home state in the Midwest. Fortunately for us, the loose animal must have been reported. Animal control intervened before we were injured. Given what has happened when other community members here have been attacked, yet some seriously injured and traumatized, including one community member killed. Some traumatized elders simply quit walking. Some young people refuse to play outside. We need to act. We need to come together as a community and generate an environment here where people feel safe and are safe. safe to walk anywhere on the streets of Truth or Consequence, a community where dogs are treated humanely, a place where people walking here won't need to even think about deadly dogs, aggressive and deadly dogs. When we take a hard look at it, this is really a people problem. Dog owners are responsible for the actions of their pets. Clear, easily understood ordinances backed up with monitoring for compliance with substantial costs for violations, coupled with immediate removal of aggressive, dangerous dogs from our streets, will turn this unwelcome situation around quickly. The word will spread, a welcome relief for people in our community. I'm dedicated to working with other community members who are unwilling to accept and tolerate this any longer. People who are dedicated to standing up and doing whatever it takes to have Truth or Consequences become known as a safe, welcoming place, a place for people and their pets, a place to feel safe and to be safe. This is our responsibility, and this is our opportunity to do what is right for people who live and work and play here, for our elders, our children, and for the tourists who are drawn to this friendly community. Let's give them good reason to come back and bring their friends. This is our future. We just need to get to work. After all, we are a great community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Claus, some witnesses.
Good morning, City Commissioners and residents of Truth or Consequences. My name is Jessica Murphy, 819 Ivy, and I'm the president of the Board of Directors of Wildflowers. We're a grassroots nonprofit that provides free activities and a sense of community to families with children in Sierra County. We are officially incorporated as of June 2017. We graduated from the Bountiful Alliance and want to share our gratitude for the board who supported our organization's growth since 2013. We are excited to invite the community to an upcoming open house party with both Tresco and Little Things Matter during Tresco's annual Fall Festival, October 26th from 4 to 6 p.m. Refreshments and snacks will be provided by Tresco, and the open house will be held downtown at Wildflowers and Little Things Matter, which is 400 and 402 Broadway. We will be open, offering information about services, games, and free activities. We will also be offering a ring sling workshop at no cost to parents. Come, make a sling to carry your baby, enjoy free food, games, crafts, and connect with other families in our community. We would also like to invite you to join us on Halloween from 6 to 8 p.m. for music, refreshments, crafts, and a free sticker for each trick-or-treater. Thank you to the City of Truth or Consequences for your continued support of our organization, and to the children and families in our community.
Thank you. And I forgot to add that if you want something as part of the record, thank you, Jessica, please put it in the black box next to the microphone. Mr. Wood.
Commissioners, before we start the time, I would ask you to indulge me for 5 minutes, if you would. I think it would be helpful for your future deliberations and determined deliberations. If there's somebody in the audience that would be willing to give me that 2 minutes, I certainly would appreciate that. And if you would you please rule on that request?
I believe, Mr. Whitton, that we have a 3-minute public comment rule, and if we start to break it and to deviate, it's just everyone's going to want a 5-minute opportunity. I appreciate you probably have a lot of facts that you want to get out in a very short period of time. I will certainly bow to the will of my fellow commissioners. If anyone wants to break with our procedure and rules and make a motion to give Mr. Whitton 5 minutes, I have no motion, so you have your 3 minutes, sir. You have your 3 minutes, sir.
Would I be able to get 2 minutes from somebody else?
You have 3 minutes to do what you are trying to do. So what other people want to do, they're entitled to 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, City Manager and staff, members of the audience, and guests. My name is Klaus Wittern, and I reside at 618 Charles, POC, New Mexico. You have heard me speak in support of replacing all water and electric meters on previous meetings of the PUAB and the City Commission regarding this issue, and today is no exception. However, as on previous occasions, I remain committed that city staff can undertake this task with the exception of the installation of the approximately $350,000 electronic AMI-RF system, which will include integration costs and training of city staff to the tune of $180,000. The entire cost would be less than $2.7 million, or less than one-half of the proposed cost by JESCO, especially when you would include the approximately $1.7 million 20-year data management costs, $80,000 plus per year, that are not included in the so-called turnkey costs being proposed. Neither are the financial costs including included in the proposal. I'm very disappointed that what is being suggested by the proposer as a cost-benefit analysis is merely an expenditure reflection, but by no stretch of any imagination would it pass as a cost-benefit analysis by any analyst, which, by the way, was required as a condition of the Commission's previous willingness to go forward with the $49,500 state-required audit, and to gain the support by the Commissioners and to start, I'm sorry. Jeff Richter, whose seat is currently being held by Commissioner Lord Heckler and Commissioner Kathy Clark, who is still a city commissioner. Furthermore, I'm keenly aware of the staff's and managers, city managers, staff attempt to absolutely minimize the city's expenditures that would impact the budget. There are too many other desperate needs. And I concur. I would suggest the city can lease the meters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Widow. Anyone else who'd like to address Hans?
I will provide a copy of the remaining amount.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, City Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, City Manager, and staff. I want to make a comment about where Date Street joins Main Street in that corner there. I know that just a short while ago, a car going around that corner aquaplaned and went through the front window of the building opposite C Properties. I thought the owner was going to be here this morning. He spoke to me a couple of days ago. And I did notice on Monday evening that the sprinklers again were spraying water all over the road on that corner. So it hasn't been resolved. And of course, that's a pretty sharp corner. If somebody doesn't know the corner and they go into that corner and all of a sudden they hit water on the road. And that's what happened that particular night when a large Ford motor car went through his front window. So maybe if we can try and make sure that that water doesn't go on the road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Randall Lawson, 701 Poplar Street here in Truth and Consequences. Commissioners, Mayor, City Manager. My last appearance here, I guess, stirred up a little bit of controversy, I take it, because I got a letter from our distinguished mayor. And I'm here to respond to Mr. Green. And I'm going to read this as your comment, sir. It says, because I'm with the Friends of the Pool. Everybody here, I think, pretty much knows that. He says, first, let me state that I don't remember any city commissioner putting forth a motion to close the pool because of the financial drain of our limited budget. No, sir. There's no one up there that has said anything about closing the pool. But, whenever the pool is inspected, once again, sometime in February, if I'm not mistaken, it will be closed. And that's going to take the monkey off your back, you think. But it will not, because we're going to hold all of your feet to the fire on this pool. I guarantee you we will. Now, also, it seems like you had the impression that I was threatening you with a word that I used. And this here, I'm going to quote you, Mayor Green. When I talked to Manager Fuentes, when we had our meeting, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, I told him, I says, Mayor, Juan, I can be your biggest supporter, or I can be your worst nightmare. He didn't get offended. He wasn't threatened. At least he didn't tell me that. But then whenever I say that to you, you get threatened, and you send me a letter in the mail. But I did do a definition of nightmare. A frightening or unpleasant dream. I had a nightmare after watching the horror movie. A person, thing, or situation that is very difficult to deal with, such as Mr. Green and his decisions are a nightmare. Or you may say, Mr. Lawson's pressure on closing the pool is one hell of a nightmare. So, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commission. Ron Fenn, Truth or Consequences. I'm here to speak about the meter program. And to make things very, very simple, we're looking at $8 million. Close enough. We're looking at 4,000 customers. That's $2,000 per customer for meters. There is nothing in that $8 million that covers the water lines that lead up to the meters. So where the leaks are, we're not addressing. Of course, the addressing of the water lines in this city is a $20+ million project. And with the city's budget for the water department and their revenues, you're looking at a 40 or 50 year necessary plan in order to replace those water lines. And that's only one of the 4 utilities that needs serious consideration. The city is 100 years old, and for 100 years there has never been a definitive plan for addressing the replacement of utilities. And as far as the data processing that these people offer this city, it's a joke, because there is no management personnel in this city that can analyze data or choose not to analyze data to make decisions. We buy and buy and buy, and we're buying ourselves into extinction. The city cannot afford to spend $8 million for some new meters until after we've replaced the water lines. And that, as I say, is probably a 30 or 40 year project. But it won't start until somebody makes the plan and starts working the plan and making it happen. We cannot do 60 miles of roads. We cannot do thousands of electrical lines and transformers. We cannot do sewer lines all at once in this city unless we build it someplace else. use some discretion here, folks. This is our city, not Mr. Fuentes' city, who is the architect of all of these disastrous contracts that the city has been embroiled in over the years. Think about it, please.
Mayor, Commissioner.
We have a glitch.
Houston, we have a glitch.
Not even before this.
I'm Jeff Dornbush, 1122 West 8th Avenue. I'm here to, as a private citizen, to address my concerns with the meter change-out proposition. I have to agree with Mr. Fenn. We have serious infrastructure issues that need to be addressed and will cost lots of money. For $5.3 million, we are going to roughly receive $1 million worth of meters. They will be installed quickly and efficiently, and we will get an information storage system contract to go along with that, and a calibration fee contract to go along with that. I didn't get to 8 million, I only got to 7 million, but that's a lot of money for $1 million worth of meters. I also find that there's a conflict of interest with the YESCO presentation that shows us that we cannot do it ourselves without losing a lot of money. I take umbrage at that. I think we can work together to come to with a plan to replace our meters in increments and have the whole thing done in 5 years, and all the revenue will be ours without any service contracts. And then we can start addressing the 21% of our pumped water that goes missing even after we have a 5% increase in meter efficiency. So the big issue here is that 21% of our pumped water is going bye-bye. Like Mr. Fenn said, these meters only tell you what's going on downstream of them. They cannot tell you what's going on upstream. The information that they're going to be collecting is nothing more than usage information. It's not going to tell us anything about what's happening upstream. It's not going to tell us where the leaks are, except on the property owner's property if there is a leak. So I think for $7 million, we can do a better job of replacing our meters ourselves. And as somebody with experience in this field and years of actual work in the field, I'd be willing to volunteer my time to help the city set up a program to replace these meters if we choose to do it ourselves, which we are totally capable of doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, mayors, city commissioners. I'm Linda DiMarino on behalf of Main Street Truth or Consequences. First off, I want to thank the city and Don Armijo's crew for removing the sidewalks that are being replaced in the downtown. As you know, we got a grant through AARP to replace some of the crumbling sidewalks, so they're removing those right now so that they can be replaced. That's exciting. Going hand in hand with that is through the AARP grant is what we call Walk Downtown, and we're going to be starting it this week. We're going to start with the first two. There'll be one at Friday morning at 10 a.m. and these first two are going to be led by Mayor Green. We're going to meet at the Healing Waters Plaza 10 a.m. on Friday, and on Monday at 6 p.m. we'll meet at the Healing Waters Plaza and we'll do a little walk around town. We'll be able to see some of those newly poured sidewalks, so that's a really exciting thing. Tomorrow we are hosting with the Chamber of Commerce Manufacturing Day that will be 4 to 7 o'clock tomorrow at the brewery. We'll have a couple local manufacturers there. You can see what they do, talk to them about that. And then the other event we have coming up pretty soon is the Trick or Treat Downtown, and that will be on Tuesday, October 31st. And we'll be blocking off Broadway for that. Trick or Treat itself starts at 6, but there will be activities at the Healing Waters Plaza starting at 5 o'clock, including costume contests, pet costume contests, carved pumpkin contests, and, all things Halloween, except for apple bobbing, because that's still really gross. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission? Yes, Collison.
Yes, good morning. My name is Collie Sue Lawson, and I live at 701 Poplar, and I'm here to invite all of y'all for the third annual Halloween Bash that we put on yearly, and this is through Friends of the Pool. So it's going to be this Saturday night at Greats, starting at 6 o'clock. We will have social hour. 7, there will be a band, there's going to be food, we're having a cake auction, a costume contest, we'll have a tarot reader, fishing pond, a little bit of everything. So we'd like to invite everybody here to come out and join us at that time. The cost is like $12 a person or $20 for a couple, and this is mainly to go for things that we need for our pool that we try to buy, each year. Also, I would like to know where we stand, the status is on the pool, if there's anyone here to report on that. As far as the resurfacing, because we've been gone, and I do understand that it has been talked about, but I didn't know what all the details were yet, as far as if y'all have gotten anybody to resurface it or anything yet, or what it is. So I appreciate it. So maybe we could have an update on that. That would be great. Thank you very much.
Anyone else like to address the commission? Thank you. Hearing none, then we will go to number D, response to public comments. Anyone, Commissioner Clark.
Just very briefly, I would like to thank Mr. Winter, Mr. Fenn, and Mr. Dornbush for the incredible amount of thought and energy you've put into this meter issue for us.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'd like to kind of address Ms. Sue's, Collie Sue's request for an update, and Mr. Randall, of course, is for those of you who might have been here a prior meeting, the City Commission did authorize staff to proceed forward with the finding of the funding and contracting with a contractor to come in and resurface the pool. That's why it has been closed since October 15th, I believe. Tracy Burnett has reached out to some of the vendors, and we do have a quote from Pool Pro, which is a CES. We can do direct contract with them, and I believe the quote is around $97,000, which we are going to been working with Melissa to make sure that we get that requisition issued out, hopefully next week, so that they can start working on it and scheduling that project.
How did that happen?
So I believe in talking with Tracy Burnett, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I believe they can get it done within the time frame. So again, the commission has already made them given us the authorization to proceed forward. So there is no, at least from the commission's action, any intent to close anything. Of course, it always has to be resurfaced before reinspection can occur. And I believe Tracy is in communication with the vendor on that. So that's where we stand on that. So we'll probably be seeing more activity as in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Manager Fuentes, am I correct that there were 2 options that we were presented with, and we're taking the more expensive one because it lasts for longer?
It's a longer-term solution, that is correct.
Yes, and we want to keep on closing the pool every 4 or 5 years and doing the cheaper.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other further comments to the comments? All right, thank you very much. Seeing none, the next item is a presentation. Sierra County Truth and Consequences Chamber of Commerce app, and I'm going to let Commissioner Heschler take over now because he was the one that brought this to the attention to the commission in the first place.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Recently, I met with Mr. Townsend at an event at the Nadine Garner Center, and our discussion ensued around making people aware of how and when they can use the Sierra County app in order to promote businesses in our community. The app is available on iPhones and smartphones as a free download. I told him that I would present the information during a commission report a couple of weeks ago, which I did, and I want to thank Mayor Green and Mayor Fuentes for allowing us to invite Mr. Townsend to the commission for a more formal presentation. With that being said, I urge every citizen to download this app to your phones and for businesses to post this information where your customers can see it. Please share the app information with anyone seeking information about the communities and businesses in Sierra County. I would like to ask Mr. Townsend now to make this presentation.
Thank you. I've got to start by apologizing. We've been trying to figure out technically how to get the app from the phone up on that screen up there. And then yesterday I dropped my phone and now I can't get the app to go upright. It will only go sideways. So we're going to look at it sideways. Sorry.
Maybe we just tilt the room?
We could do that, yes. The app has 12 different icons on there, and they're for reaching different information. Uh-oh. Don't want you to power off right now. Thank you. And we have maps, which are maps of Truth or Consequences, the Hot Springs area, the Elephant Butte State Park, Percha Dam State Park, the Caballo State Park, and they're all Google Maps on there of those particular areas. Then we start getting into the more complicated stuff, like we have lodging on there. And if we go to the lodging, you have a list of all the hotels, all alphabetical, and we can scroll down those hotels. It's loading slowly in here. I think that's because of the internet connection in here. But it's not just a list of the hotels. If you choose to pick one of the hotels and click on the arrow to the right, it will take you to a description of the hotel. And there's also, like I say, we're loading slowly. There's a call us and an email us, and clicking on that button will take you directly to the dial pad with their number already up there, so you can actually call right to the hotel. So those are the hotels, and they're all on there. And at that point, I'd ask everybody, if you find that we're missing something, we want to know, because we want to keep this up to date and actual. So if you see anything that you think is wrong or misinformation or not enough information, we're eager to keep this thing up and to put in there as much as we can to help anybody who's looking for things in the city and in the county. The dining is the same as the hotels. You'll find the restaurants on there, and again, you can go over to the restaurant and you'll get the same thing. You'll get a description of the restaurant. You can see the menu by clicking on See Menu. And like I say, we've got a slow connection here, but you can actually go to the menu. You can click Call Us. You can make your reservation. Going on to attractions, we have a list of attractions. You'll find here you've got the history, you've got a lot of information about the city, about museums, the ghost towns. So ghost towns are on there with pictures, with descriptions of the different ghost towns. A lot of this is taken from the Chamber Tourism part of their website. But like I say, updating the information is what we want to do. We want to keep it actual. We want to keep it informative so that everybody can find what they need. We have outdoor adventures where we've got bicycling, bird watching, golf, fishing, hiking, hunting, off-road, rock climbing, water sports, wilderness areas, Ted Turner expeditions, and all of those lead to more information about what we're trying to describe there. And trying to get feedback is really important. We've been trying ever since we built this, and we don't get a lot, so we have to use our own sort of trying to look for things that we should be adding, but we'd like to know. So please, we don't feel offended if somebody tells us that something on there is not what they think should be there, or there's not enough. We've got natural healing where we list natural healing, and the people that are doing the natural healing, this happens to be the card reading and that kind of thing there, which is under the astrology. Excuse me. But you can actually go to massage, and you've got a list of all the people that do massage in the town, and you can go to their information as well and call us. So we're trying to make very accessible the information on the county for anybody who visits us. This is something they can download, an app they can download from iTunes or from the Google Play, and when they're finished visiting, they can uninstall it. That's not a problem. So it's not something that's permanent on their phone. They can download it, they can uninstall it as they like, but while they've got it on their phone, I used to get a lot of people come to the front desk and they'd ask me questions for 20, 30 minutes. Where can we go? What can we do? What's in the hot springs? Which ones are outside? Which ones are inside? How many restaurants do you have? Do you have anything close? It takes a lot of time. Having this means I can now tell them, well, if you've got a smartphone and you download this, you can take the information with you while you're in town, while you're in the county, and out at the lake, wherever you want to go. And when you're done, just uninstall it when you go home if you want to. In June of this year, we had over 700 people download the app. I went and looked on the background for the app, and so it is something that people are looking at, and I think it's something that we should encourage, because it really does help, and it saves me time, so I'm sure it would save other people time trying to explain things. You've got all the state parks on there, and we've also got the events on there, which are directly linked to the event page of Sierra County Info. Again, that has to load, but those things are all there to look at. The hot springs are there, a list of all the hot springs, same as we have a list of the hotels and the dining. So it's pretty comprehensive, and I'm sure there's a lot we can add, and we want to know about that too, so we can add it. But I think it's taken a lot of time to put together. There's a lot of coding in there, and the Chamber has borne most of the expense for it, so we need to use it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that presentation. Any questions, comments from the Commission? Commissioner Heschel. Yes, sir.
Mr. Townsend, how's this app being promoted other than word of mouth?
I did make a little flyer, which is 8.5 by 5.5, the sort of a half of a regular page, and laminated them and put them in little plastic stands, and you will find them in a lot of the hotels, usually around the front desk, but sometimes they get shoved off to one side because I don't think they realize the usefulness of it. Although I did speak to the owner of the Comfort the other day. I met him while I was up at Dennis picking a go order up, and he's now asked for an 8.5 by 11 that he can put in his guest books in the rooms. So we are getting somewhere, and like a lot of things, it's a slow process informing people, which is why I'm really happy that you guys did this, because hopefully this will get the word out a little faster. But obviously the hotels and the restaurants are the places that that this could be broadcast more to the guests that are in town. But there's a lot of places. It could be on our websites, just informing people that it's available. If people are looking up the city before they come here, or looking up the lake before they come here, or looking up the county before they come here, those websites on our tourism website, if there was just something up there that said that there's an app available that would inform people about what we have, I think it would spread the word more, and I think it would make the app more popular. It is free, doesn't cost anybody anything. And of course, if we start getting people using it, and if they keep it on their phone, we can even push messages to them. Of course, we don't want to do that too much because people get upset if their phone's always giving them a message from somebody that they don't necessarily want. But if there's something important coming up in the town as far as tourism is concerned, we can shoot out little messages through the app to whoever's got it on their phone and let them know that we've got something big coming up.
How would businesses access a placard, or how would we get that information to them? What I'd like to see is a placard posted conspicuously at every business, and then the employees trained in a way that they can at least point to the app. If they don't know too much about this community, at least they know where to find the information or point toward that direction. Is that an expense that the chamber can afford, or how can we?
We'd sure look at doing it. Yeah. It needs to be used. It costs us a lot of time and money to build, and it needs to be used, and I think it's something that could be used because not everybody knows. I was surprised when we started building the website and building the app how much I didn't know, and found out as I went along. And I've lived here 10 years, so I'm sure there's a lot of people, again, who know a lot about maybe the things they're interested in, but maybe not other aspects of what you can find in the county. So I think it's a great way of getting the word out to people and a great way of people being able to find things. So if we can get input, we can get output. The more we can put in there, the more people can get out of it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dowd.
Thank you.
I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you. Any questions? Are there further questions? I just have a follow-up to Commissioner Heschler. I'm just going to throw this out for the future. That maybe where nonprofit organizations that are producing events are using city lodgers tax, that one of the requirements, besides saying this ad is paid for in part by lodgers tax, that we put this information, that we require them to put this information on their ads. For further information about our community and our county, please go onto the free app and you put it there. That's one suggestion. And another suggestion, Hans, that you were talking about, takes a half an hour where this does the work for you. And you mentioned that there are maps, and I'm just going to make an assumption. I know you should never assume, but probably the three biggest questions are lodging, restaurants, and spas. Just going to make that assumption.
And those things are very meticulously detailed there
and to that, and to your point, you're absolutely right. All I would suggest is we don't have 1,000 spas, we don't have 500 restaurants and 1,200 lodgings. Since you have maps, we might take, and not, since you do it alphabetically, number 1, number 2, number 3, and they go on the map so they know how to get to the spa, how to get to the restaurant, because it's right there on the map. And I know that we do that right now with some of the brochures that we have. The spa map, for example, shows what's location. You have out-of-town visitors coming in, they don't know where Austin is, for example, or Broadway or Maine. Just makes it easier, that's all, just a suggestion.
If I may, the Hot Springs map is actually on there. When you go to maps and you go to Hot Springs, that central town map with the spas on is there.
But I'm thinking about restaurants and lodgings.
One thing I'm afraid I missed there is if I went to community, we also have healthcare where the hospital, their address, their phone number is listed, the clinics are listed, education, the schools are listed. They're all listed under community. Every business that we know of is listed, and you can go to the local businesses on the community button, and it will give you a list of businesses. So, like I say, we're trying to make it as comprehensive as we can, and for that we need information from other people because we don't know it all, and we like to get some feedback. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for what you and the chamber does. I have two quick things. We read a proclamation 2 weeks ago for National Manufacturing Day, and in truth and consequences, encourage all citizens and manufacturers to attend the event hosted by Main Street Truth or Consequences and the Chamber of Commerce at the TRC Brewing Company on Thursday. So we appreciate you partnering with Main Street on that one. I totally enjoyed your playing of the accordion on Sunday at Oktoberfest at the brewery. So this is you for your office at the Chamber. And the other thing, I just want to congratulate you. I had an email from Jen Schroer from the New Mexico Hospitality Association. I think I copied all my fellow commissioners on that, and that it was that the Truth and Consequences Chamber of Commerce, Sierra County, is a finalist for their Top Hat Award in printed material, and that I was given to understand is your visitor's guide. So you're breathing some rarefied air, because I know, and I saw what some of the other competition is. We wish you well. And it's always great to get the name of Truth and Consequences out there beyond our own boundaries and borders. So thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you.
And please take this and put it in the right place. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. The next item is consent calendar, which consists, I need a motion for approval of the consent calendar, which consists of City Commission regular minutes September 27th, 2017, Public Utility Advisory Board minutes September 18, 2017, Public Arts Advisory Board minutes September 18, subrecipient quarter reports, and lodger's tax quarter reports. We can approve this in its entirety, or whoever makes the motion, if they want to pull out one to discuss it on its own, we could do that, whatever your pleasure is. I will stand for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent calendar as noted.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second. Second. Second by Commissioner Frankel. Is there any further discussion or comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item now in our reformatted agenda is the animal control and ordinance change. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Gary Woodcock came before us and told us of the incident that had happened to he and his wife, and that there were other people in the community who had experienced the same thing. We heard from Commissioner Clark that she, fortunately, it was not an incident that could have gone the other way, had an incident also, and we requested that this be put on the agenda, asked staff to look at it, asked legal to look at it, and to come back with some additional information, how maybe we could put more teeth into our ordinance, have it enforced stronger, looking at the minimum mandatory fines, et cetera, et cetera. So at this particular point, I'm going to turn it either over to Manager Fuentes and or Attorney Rubin.
Let me jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
If you recall, actually, you were talking about some of the incidents that happened in the last few weeks. There was even a more tragic incident that occurred back around 2010, 2011, and that guys will look at the animal control ordinance pretty closely at that time, and we went through significant changes at that point. And I believe we came up with something that was actually pretty strong. What we had done, we had several meetings back in 2010, 2011. I had worked very closely with the animal control officer at that time, and I was working specifically with Deb Peters, and we went through really every section, section by section, looked at state law, which would allow us to make the changes that we wish to make. So I believe what we have is already a pretty good ordinance. I will tell you, we have, for example, we have an ordinance called Restraint of Animals, and I'll read the first couple sentences because I think this might address some of the violations that may have recently occurred. All animals shall be contained upon the premises of the owner unless restrained off the premises under the immediate control of the owner or responsible person. While restrained on the premises of its owner or responsible person, no lead less than 25 feet in length shall be used. So there's a lot of ordinances, but that's one of them. We have another ordinance called Vicious Animals, that if there is an attack, that you don't need to show a prior history of bad behavior by the dog in the past. That would be just the one attack itself would be enough to have the dog put down. We also, at the time, implemented a mandatory minimum of $100 for any violation of the code. And certainly, I'd be receptive to discussing, raising that if the commission feels that's appropriate. I did talk to the chief yesterday, and I believe you had some comments you want to make. If there may be really some more enforcement issues here than maybe the way the ordinances are drafted, so I'll defer to the chief.
Good morning, Mayor, City Commissioners, Mayor Pro Tem. On October the 16th, we had a informal town hall meeting to address animal control issues, and I have to tell you, it was a very productive meeting. We had about 20 members from the community there, and we actually stayed there for 2 hours discussing this. We do have the ordinances on the books to effectively address these. Judge Sanders was there to express the judicial side of it, but there was also some great feedback that we obtained and things and services that we can provide ahead of that in reference to fencing, going out and doing yard inspections, reaching out to our folks in the community that have rentals, and providing that service to them, and actually going out and looking at the property that if they're going to allow pets, what's the best way to secure them? A lot of it was a perception, and one gentleman, for instance, brought up that one of our animal control officers found a dog that was running loose and put the dog back in the yard and fixed the fence. They were pretty frustrated with that. And the perception was that was all that was done. But the truth behind that was that person had been cited into court 3 times as a result of that. So there's things being done that we need to get out into the public on what's going on. But we're going to take a more aggressive stance on enforcing the current ordinances that we have, addressing dog noise complaints at night. We're looking at developing a new citation that actually has, it's more of it's a municipal citation that actually any officer that's on duty, not just animal control, can issue on the scene. Say it's a barking dog at midnight, we've been out there twice, we can actually issue the citation right there on the scene. It has the bail amount for the fine, and they get cited into municipal court. And I think a lot can be done in following up with the folks that are calling in to dispatch with some of these calls, maybe either at the time of the call or the next day, to educate them on what we did. So that's the plan going forward. We do now have a small group, and we're going to be meeting again to discuss some of the fencing issues and these issues as they come up. It was a very productive meeting. We just had another one this past Monday on the Adobe Hills gun range, and that as well was well attended and extremely productive. So I think that's the direction we're going to go in, and I am confident that with the current existing ordinances, through very coordinated enforcement, we're going to address these issues as they come up.
And by the way, I did not mean to suggest that I would not be receptive to looking at any ordinance you want to look at. Certainly, I'd be happy to do that. But I guess my point was we did this pretty exhaustively back in 2010, 2011. Just to make that point.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the chief or Manager Fuentes or Attorney Rubin? Chief, I've got 2. You're mentioning fencing issues, and when I took a look at the code, it just talked about if you drive a stake into the ground and put dolly on an 8-foot lead or whatever you want to call it, chain, whatever you want to call it, it's ambiguous. And maybe, Attorney Rubin, you can help me out. Does someone who has a dog staked outside, for want of a better word, staked, are they required to have an enclosed yard or a fence where that dog is staked?
Currently, as it's currently written, and I'm looking at a city in Arizona and a couple of cities here on how they addressed it. No, it's extremely vague, and it's really difficult to enforce that because it just says a fence. Well, it doesn't describe what the fence is, how high a fence has to be. And I have to tell you, I mean, there's nothing more frightening when you walk by someone's yard and you have some animal that looks like it wants to rip you apart. And just because you're walking in front of the house, that dog's right up at the fence, and you're like, is that dog going to come over the fence at me? So we do want to address that. Some of the leash laws need to be strictly enforced. So we are going to be looking at the fencing issue. But I think that's going to come down to an issue with rental licensing and code enforcement, so forth and so on. But we're going to offer the service immediately that we'll go out and do an on-site inspection, because if someone rents a home to someone and knowingly they have a pet and that dog attacks someone, they're opening themselves up for some liability. So we want to make sure that the animal's safe, that the family that has the animal are doing everything that they can in a responsible manner to ensure the safety of the public, especially if they know the animal has a propensity of biting people or attacking someone. So yes, we are. That did come up. So
let me do one thing that might be helpful. I should make copies for everybody. At least I have one. Here is a copy of the section I was reading, 3-31.
Right.
I read the first two sentences, but maybe it's easier actually to see it. So let me just go ahead and hand that to Commissioner Franklin. You can kind of pass it around. But that's the section we're talking about. It's very interesting because, again, it says, first sentence, all animals shall be contained.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I know. I understand. And the second sentence says that you have to, use a lead that's not less than 25 feet. So you have those two together.
Okay.
Right.
And my other concern, Chief, and maybe I'm trying to add 2 and 2 and coming up with 3 and not coming up with 4, so please correct me. But I'm willing to bet that the rate of recidivism of dogs that run out of houses is a great one. And it's not the dog's fault, it's the owner's fault. And how can we look as we drive on I-25 and look at a littering fine of $300, which should not put life and limb at risk, and in our own community, where our citizens are out for a walk, and they are at risk with a running dog, because you don't know if that dog's going to go up and lick you to death or try to do some damage to you. I think, Attorney Rubin, I think $100 does not send the right message that we want for our people to feel safe in this community. We've got a dog park now that's going to be opened up. We want to be a dog-friendly community. I know a lot of our motels and spas have, they take in animals because people travel with animals now. I think, this is just my personal opinion, I'm not speaking for the commission, but I think that we should look on increasing a mandatory fine from $100 to $300. If litter is worth $300, then how do you not equate a life to that or more? Doesn't, to me, it just does not make sense.
that's one of the issues that did come up, was the punitive side of it. And unfortunately, the way our current ordinances are written, that's out of my control. I have nothing to, I can't do any more than we're currently doing with that. One of the issues that did come up was repeat offenders. So we are strategizing to deal with that. We're gonna look at that and take a very aggressive stance on it. Currently, getting that information, because we don't have a records management system that our folks that can access out in the field to determine how many times have we been out here. We have to call dispatch, and hopefully they'll be able to retrieve it from their system. You've been out here. We don't get that information when they send the officers out on a call, so sometimes it relies on the memory of the person going out there, we've already been out here. Well, if we've had a dog that's ran out of the yard 2 or 3 times, that should be obvious there's a problem. So we need to get that information to our personnel that are out there doing the job and enforcing them, so that when we recognize that that's the case, we're not just putting the dog back in the yard, we're actually taking the dog to the pound. Because, and you're right, it needs to be dealt with. And like I said, it was a very good meeting. There was incredible feedback. And I had both of our animal control officers there because I wanted them to hear exactly what was going on. And the punitive side of the fines that occurred, Judge Sanders explained, her standpoint on that. And frankly, there's, I can't, make it up as I go. It's got to be either shall or may be fined. And I think that's where it's gonna come down to. But there definitely needs to be some teeth put into it at that end to deal with that, especially with the irresponsible owners. But at the same time, you know, we have folks that live in this community, some are my neighbors, and they have small pets. And I'm gonna tell you, they're very protective of their owners, and you go to say hi, and you'll have a little chihuahua chipping at you. You know, we need to use some judgment and not, we need to go by the spirit of the ordinance, not the letter of it, because there's some folks that the dog's just doing their job. You know, that's who they are, and I don't want to penalize those folks. So I don't want to create an environment where we're just, you know, doing a blanket and, hey, this is the way it is. I want some discretion in there.
And I agree with you. I mean, I think, Chief, there's a difference between someone bending down to pet a cute little dachshund or a chihuahua, and they become, hey, you're going after my master or my mistress, and I'm going to protect them. That's one thing. A dog running wild day after day with no collar, not licensed, just out in our streets. I think that's what we're really talking about.
Right, absolutely.
And Jay, Attorney Rubin, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought the $100 was mandatory, that Judge Sanders did not have wiggle room on that.
It's a mandatory minimum, as a matter of fact. So theoretically, if you have a repeat offender, the judgment goes as high as $500 and 90 days in jail. The $100 fine is a mandatory minimum that we imposed.
Right.
So yeah, you can raise that, but I mean, she always has the discretion to go higher if we have a bad situation.
Okay. So that a lot of good points came out of that meeting. Really good group of folks. I mean, I have to tell you, I've been contacted by a number of them since, and now I'm getting invited to coffee with them. So I think that's great. But it was important to get that feedback. It was important for our animal control personnel to hear, one, what the perception of their performance was, which turned out to be in some areas, you know, well, this is what I saw, but something else occurred and they were unaware of it. So we're probably going to look at what we can do to change that. And I think a lot of it's going to be following up with the reporting party to make sure that they know what our actions were. Because the days of, well, I've known that guy for 30 years, or they, you know, there's somebody in the community, everyone has to be treated equal. And that did get brought up as well, and I'll tell you, that's not going to happen. But we do want to use some discretion. I think discretion is important. I've been bit by little chihuahuas, and I've had the best intentions because they look cute, you're right. And I'm like, whoa. But it happens. So we're taking a different approach on it. We're actually going to develop a mission and value statement for animal control, so that we have one for the animal shelter, but I want to make sure that I give our animal control officers the framework in which to base all their decisions while they're out there in the field. And I also want to add one other thing. It's not just 2 animal control officers. We have 15 policemen out there that have the authority to deal with those as well.
Thank you. Manager Fuentes, maybe we could have, so the citizens know that we are taking this seriously and that the chief is on it, that maybe the chief could come back in January, because I know we're going to be short during November, December with the holidays, and give us kind of an update on if there's been any changes, where we are, where we're at, et cetera, et cetera. I'd appreciate that. All right. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Attorney Rubin, for that. We'll see where we go with that, but I don't want to lose sight of this, because it's very, very important. The next item is discussion action, request to proceed with the Night Skies ordinance. Commissioner Clark.
So you have a copy of the draft that's been done by Mr. Easley and Tammy and myself. And if you had any questions for it, I think it's very well done, personally, in that's, you know, I read it to you last week, and this is basically the same thing, except for that both Bo and Tammy were willing to put their first and last names onto the last paragraph, which makes it more personal. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask me.
I do have a question, Commissioner Clark. How did you visualize us getting this information out to them? How would you like the information gotten out to the community? Should the city do a little ad? Should we put it in our utility bills besides posting it at City Hall? What did you kind of envision the end game here?
I don't know, Mr. Easley, is he still here? No.
I think you're that's
I
right.
think you're
Yeah,
right. Like you said, we could have it at the utility office whenever anybody turns on new service. I was thinking about it the other day when I went in to pay my utility bills, and inside each one of my bills was the scam notice.
Right.
So I don't, it's not going to be an extra piece of postage, but it would be an extra piece of paper. I don't know if you would feel comfortable doing that. But there are a lot of people that have the properties already turned on that might be interested in this information, that aren't reading the papers and aren't listening to us. Oh, perfect timing. We're talking about distribution of our letter.
Oh, okay.
I had posed the question to Commissioner Clark, though, because unfortunately he stepped out. How do you see this information being disseminated throughout the community so people know how the program works, who to contact, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, do you have any thoughts or what you would like to see happen?
We could put it, I guess, when we bill, we could put it out when we bill. That would be one option. Do we want to put it in an ordinance, or?
Does it need to be in ordinance form?
That's your question.
I don't think so. I
don't think so either.
I think it's just a.
It's a courtesy.
Yeah,
to
I
the
don't
public,
think,
and they
yeah.
don't-
It's just an informational piece.
You know, maybe, I'm just sitting here thinking about this, that, I'm looking at the letter, and the second to last paragraph talks about two options.
Right.
Maybe you might want to explain the second option, in fact, that involves members of the public. Maybe you want to elaborate on that now, just what that means.
You mean make that bigger in the letter?
No, I mean, just right now, just maybe
Oh,
just
okay.
everybody's listening in.
Well, we knew what that was. And Bo, you can interject anytime you want.
Another option too, Melissa just said we could put it on the website too, the TRC website.
Oh, that's a good
That would be a
idea.
good idea. Yeah, let people know that yeah, that's excellent.
It's a really
I like
good
that.
idea.
I guess I was just saying, what might not hurt just for us to articulate, our option two is for members of the public to purchase through the city approved lights to replace those in their affected areas. The current cost for shielded lights range from approximately $97 to $150 each. I just want to mention that, that's all, for people who are listening in.
Oh, right.
That's all I was doing.
Well, I think that's what we were talking about the last week is, if I don't like the lights in my little neighborhood, I could come down and talk to either you or Tammy, and they could order some lights for me, as long as I'm, willing to pay for them.
Right.
That you would in fact install them, because you don't want me up on a ladder doing that kind of stuff.
No, ma'am.
But that's the option if people want to get it done faster than just the regular turnover, right?
Right.
Well, I do have one question. Is there any value to the bulbs and the shields, that whole apparatus that you would be replacing? Does it have any value besides just the metal we could use for recycling and sell it? But is there any value to that piece?
The old ones, whenever they burned up and everything?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay.
If they're not burned up, then we're replacing them anyway with the better lights.
Right, yes. We'll install them somewhere else.
Okay.
The ones that are still working.
So if they still have life, it's not a total loss for the city?
Yes, sir.
Okay, dynamite. All right, okay, anything else, Commissioner Clark, on that?
No,
Okay, thank
other
you
than
very
I
much.
gotta thank Bo and thank
And thank
Tammy.
Bo, and
they were-
thank
they
you
were
very
great.
much for clarifying that for us.
Thank you.
The next item is DFA quarterly, I beg your pardon, yes, acquisition or disposal of real property at the airport, Manager Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. So, and I apologize for the last-minute change on the agenda. Attorney Rubin did bring to my attention the last time I wanted to put this item on closed session, is that the purchase of a mobile home is not considered real property, so it does not qualify under the Open Meetings Act to be in closed session. So what you have before you is an offer to buy the property, the mobile home located at the airport. So since the Ms. Johnson, who has been living there a number of years, her husband passed away several years ago. She did suffer an accident, and she's going to be relocated by her daughter. So now the question is, what do you do with the mobile home? So they did submit an offer, and I did meet with them last week, and I expressed to them that I would present to the city commission, to you all, an offer to buy the mobile home, as well as a storage shed that is there, and all the improvements that were made on the exterior for $9,000. Also with a 90-day, 90-day period for her to vacate the property. So that is what's before you, commissioners. At this time, we'll entertain any questions. As far as what we will do with the property if we purchase it, that I will present to the Airport Advisory Board for some ideas, and staff at the airport, and make and ask for recommendations that will be forthcoming back to the City Commission. And with that, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Manager Fuentes. Any
Mr.
questions?
Mayor, I do have a question. Where is this $17,000 coming from?
That's 9,000.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, that was their original asking price, 17. But as you can see on the bottom there, it says offer. The offer that I made to them and we negotiated was for 9,000.
And where is that money coming from?
That will come probably from the general fund and the airport funds.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I can just say one thing. There is a gentleman who is on the Airport Advisory Board who I believe has met with, besides myself, other commissioners. And one of his strong concerns is security at the airport. That there's a lot of valuable planes there. Our hangars are not exactly Fort Knox. And that wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a way to have security located on the airport? And evidently that was the original agreement with this woman, I guess, and her husband, that they were allowed to go on city property because they would be nighttime eyes out there on the airport, on city property. So this might be one way to solve two things. Is either we'd have a derelict building, I guess, there if we didn't do it, or we'd have to pay the cost of removing it, or now we have an opportunity to have a home site that could be used for someone to live in, and they could be supplying security to the airport. So I just want to bring that up, that is a concern of the pilots out there, is the security of their airplanes and of the facility itself. We've got avgas out there, thousands of gallons of jet fuel, and certainly security, since that area is not totally locked up. It's accessible off, I guess it's with Highway 52, if I'm probably wrong, but whatever the highway is in front of the airport. That is a prime concern of the Airport Advisory Board. So I appreciate Mr. Manager Fuentes taking it to them if the commission should decide to move forward on this on a purchase of $9,000. That's what Commissioner Ashley is, sir.
Manager Fuentes, I assume by making a counteroffer that you actually visited the site and have taken a look at the trailer, and you feel that the trailer would be viable for some type of use for the next few years. I hope we don't buy something and then try to have to remove it in a couple of years.
No, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Heschler, I've been inside the mobile home, and Ms. Johnson does maintain it very well. And it is I believe it's about 19 years old. I mean, well, it's 1999. Right. It's not even 20. So it is in good condition. I think the improvements that they've made is that makes it very, very usable for whether it's a security for somebody to stay out there. It still has quite a bit of life out there, and like I said, it's been well maintained. It has propane gas already in there, has all the furnace and everything. So, I mean, it would be a move-in ready if it was to be used for housing, for example, less furniture.
Thank you, sir.
Any other concerns or questions? Commissioner Clark?
Who's paying the utilities on this? And are we gonna charge rent for somebody to be in there?
Again, well, in regards to utilities, Ms. Johnson does have separate utility account now. In the past, there was, part of the agreement was the city would pay for the propane. Not anymore. She has been paying the bill the last couple of months. What, ultimately, it really depends what it's being used for. If it's going to be used for somebody to stay there, then it might have to be the propane and all that might have to be from whoever is residing on that mobile home. So it really, again, those are questions that will have to come out of the Airport Advisory Board and staff as to what would be the final arrangement on the use. If it's going to be somebody living there for security purposes, what they're going to pay, because there is value to just, for living there at the airport as well.
Madam Fuentes, so when we get to that point, you bring this back up to the board where we can will we be making the decision on the final outcome for this trailer as far as who's going to live there and who's going to pay what?
Yes, the Airport Advisory Board and staff will make a recommendation, and as an advisory board, they will submit the recommendation to the commission.
Okay.
That's the electric co-op, is the electric provider up there, right?
That's correct.
Not the city, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, seeing none, I will stand for a motion to possibly authorize staff to move forward with the purchase of the 1999 TAPCO Model 1656F with the price of asking price of $9,000.
Since you said it all, Mayor, so moved.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was hoping someone would catch that, my subtlety. Not so subtle, actually. I have a motion, and I have a second by Commissioner Hessler. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
It carries on a 3-2 vote. Thank you very much. And I will give Commissioner Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioner Frankel, if they want, the opportunity to talk why you were opposed to this, if you want to. You don't have to, but I think it's just common courtesy.
I just don't personally see a lot of value in an 18-year-old mobile home.
Okay.
And I feel the same. It's property that, what are we going to do with it? How long is it going to be before it's going to be used? And, a place that's not lived in is usually run down. And so, are we spinning our wheels, and what are we going to do?
Okay, thank you for that. All right, that takes care of that piece of business. The next item is discussion action, DFA quarterly report. Our presenter is our Director of Finance, Ms. Torres.
Good morning, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, Mr. Fuentes, Ms. Catton. The City of Truth or Consequences is respectively presenting the first quarter of the financial reports. So we're going to go into our revenue expenditures recap. As we can see, I'm going to start pointing out a couple of our departments because overall, I think we did a great job on our revenue and expenditures. The general fund was at 34.61%. Our special revenue was 21.10. Our capital project was 1.83. Our utility office was 37.90. So I'm going to take a pause right there and say, woohoo, utility office, because, the utility office is one that gets their revenue in a painful manner. And what do I mean a painful manner? Their revenue comes from the penalties and the red tags. And so those are never the funnest things that we have to address, but that's how they get their money. And as you can see, we're being more consistent in that area. Kudos to Ms. Williams and her team on that. So I definitely wanted to recognize that department. The electric department is up at 29.40. The water department is 28.70. The wastewater is at 26.38. The solid waste is 26.44. And so you can see as our enterprises, right now the first quarter, what we're wanting is we want everything to stay within the 25%. So that is our ultimate goal. And our enterprises are above that. And so that's a really great thing to see. Golf course is at 12.11, cemeteries at 55.66, airport 31.89, debt service is 15.90, internal services is at 27.56, and overall is 18.39. Again, if you look at just that number of 18.39, you don't see the growth and the value to this. And there's some great value of these departments, especially our enterprises, that are doing a really good job and staying above that 25% threshold. Certain departments where we're rather lower, that just brings our overall baseline back down. Our expenditures on our general fund is 23.3. Our special revenue is 10.57. Our capital projects is at 3.53. Our utility is 25.10. Our electric is 28.49. Our water is 23.55. Our wastewater is 20.20. Our solid waste is 20.20. Our golf course is 18.90. Our cemetery is at 13.68. Our airport is 24.88. Debt service at 0. And internal services at 13.13, with an overall of 14.54. So this is a really great thing because our revenue is higher than our expenses. And that is definitely an area that we want to continue to go in our trend.
Melissa,
Yes,
before,
sir.
let me just, again, I think I do want to emphasize, and if you go back to the previous slide, I think I can't emphasize enough what you stated about the work that the utility office is doing. On the revenue side, especially for the enterprises, they are the collection agency for all of the enterprises. And as you can see, as Melissa pointed out, on all of these enterprises, electric, water, wastewater, solid waste, the collection center, they're above the 25% because they're doing the painful task of collecting, billing and collecting. But I also want to recognize, as Melissa is, Sonia and her staff for doing that work and keeping it up above the 25. And as Melissa pointed out, on the expenditure side, the department heads are very frugal with their resources, and they're staying under the 25, most of them. So I just want to kind of just emphasize it again because I think it's great progress from where we were a year and a half ago. Thank you.
Definitely, definitely. And I agree. The department heads are doing an excellent job where they're getting to know their revenue, which has been a big task that Mr. Fuentes and I have been working with them, but they're also being conscientious about their expenditures. You know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when I first came, everybody wanted. And so we're trying to change that whole mindset to what do we need? I mean, I want a lot, you know, but what do we actually need? And I think that is one of the big things that we're pounding in our department heads. And as you can see, they're doing a great job on that. On the general fund, on the revenue, tax receipts is up 35.10. The federal grant loans is 95.54. The local loans is at 21.58. License and permits is 11.72. Charges for services is at 16.74. Fine and forfeits is 52.60. Investments 34.54, with an overall of 34.61, which is a really great thing. On our special revenue, going over that, let me just kind of highlight some areas. For example, corrections, that revenue is at 130.16. The LEPF is at 100%. Our largest tax is at 19.48. Our Southwest collection is 21.63. Streets is at 28.52. Wastewater is at 1496.73. So as you can see, this kind of gives you the overview again of what we're looking at is at a 25%. And a lot of the special revenue is above that 25%, and our expenditures are below. Special revenue is one of those little tricky areas because it has those lodger's tax and recreation correction funds and fire protection. Fire protection, for example, They don't get their money until a certain time of the fiscal year. So that just kind of, the second slide just goes into more of a breakdown of our special revenue with an overview of difference of $10,321,498 of a difference, and a difference on the expenditures, which is $10,725,005. So let's talk about the big elephant in the room, our GRT. So our GRT has been, when you guys looked at these reports, right away, when you looked at fiscal 16 and 17 against 17 and 18, it kind of shouts out at you and says, whoa, you know, what's going on? Is our GRT going down? What's happening? Well, as you recall, one of the things that Mr. Fuentes and I kept on reminding everyone was that the GRT was at its highest because of a multi-million-dollar project at the Veterans Center. And so when you have a multi-million-dollar project, you're definitely going to have some major effects to your lodger's tax, to your GRT. So then what we did was, when we were preparing the budget, because most of our percentage, when we were looking at our revenues, if we would have based it on fiscal 16 and 17, we wouldn't have been fiscally responsible, because it was so tremendous, as we reminded you guys at the budget hearing workshop. So what we did was we looked at the previous years of what we were with a non-construction year. And that's what I'm showing you guys here right now. I apologize that it wasn't in your packages, because we got that done late last night. But this gives you a 5-year trend. And if you look at the 5-year trend and take away 16 and 17, this fiscal year, we're doing a really good job. The non-construction year, if you really want to look, is 13-14, which is showing $232,000. 14-15 was $245,000, and 15-16 was $255,000. Construction started in 15-16. Right now, with our GRT, we are at $264,414. So that's really great news, because if we compare the years of non-construction years, we're sustaining where we need to be. But not only sustaining, we're continuing to grow as we're supposed to be. So again, we just remind you guys, when you guys look at these reports, and we will start adding this GRT comparison, we have to take out those rosy glasses for what we had from last fiscal year, and we have to put on our reality glasses. And we need to start looking at other means of revenue that we can bring in, because we have some major projects that definitely need attention to. So on this slide, prior year versus current GRT, as I stated, you look at previous fiscal year to our current fiscal year, and it definitely jumps out. But again, just remember that that was a construction year, which was a multi-million-dollar project. If we go into the lodger's tax, the mayor's true to his heart, unfortunately, we are down there too. But again, it just goes hand in hand when it comes to your lodger's tax and your GRT. You know, we know that this multi-million dollars brought in a lot of people to work on that project. The general fund, overall, the one thing that we definitely want to bring to attention on the general fund is that our revenue is higher than what our percentage is for each fiscal year. So basically what we do is we have our actual revenue that the general fund's going to be, and we divide it by 4, and then we say, okay, that's what we're supposed to be at each quarter. And we've gone higher than what our target goal is on that. And also on the expenditures, we've done the same, where we've stayed below our target goal out of first quarter. Our next slide is our revenue again, showing the general fund, showing that we actually had 1.2 in revenue. Electric had 2.5, and debt service had 69,000. So again, we're showing that we are over the threshold for the first quarter, which is really great news. The next slide is just an outline again for the special projects, capital projects, utility office, water, wastewater. And as you can see, if we look at their threshold based on the 4 quarters divided into the one, all of them are on the over threshold of the 25%. General and enterprise fund expenditures. As Mr. Fuentes and I have stated, you know, the department heads have done an excellent job on maintaining their expenditures within that 25% threshold, especially with some of the unpredictable items that have definitely hit us. For example, the solid waste where their backhoe went down and we had to buy a brand new backhoe. That definitely wasn't on our agenda when we did budget. But overall, what these managers are doing now is when we have unforeseen circumstances that come up, they definitely make that adjustment that they need to. Expenditures for the first quarter of the budget, general fund is 1.2, electric was 1.4, and debt service was 0. Expenditures for the actual first budget, again, as you can see, on our expenditures for our special revenue and our capital projects, they're all maintaining. We're doing a really good job this fiscal year in regards to our capital projects, where we're expending the expense, and as soon as we expend the expense, we are submitting reimbursements immediately so we can get reimbursed. So that's definitely been a great help to our program and to the city of Tiercy. And that concludes the presentation for the first quarter for the city of Truth or Consequences, and I stand for any questions at this time.
Thank you, and thank you for burning the midnight oil. I could take a big deep breath when I saw that decrease in GRT. I thought my pacemaker was going to go out on me. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. Concerns, questions? Commissioner Clark, I saw you writing some notes. I'll call on you first.
Just that when you're presenting this, there's a couple of things. You know, I think that having the capital project and the debt service in there kind of skews the whole scenario, because it is like, it's not a monthly kind of income sort of thing.
Right.
And because it's scattered out through the year, you know, I just think it would be better to break that out separate if there's a way to do that, because then we're not going to be looking at 18%. We'd probably be looking at that 25, 26%.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
The other thing that I noticed is that the utility office has tightened up their when bills are due. So that's kind of one of my favorite things. If you need some money, tighten it up, bring in your receivables. But I think it's taken a lot of people by surprise, and so including this commissioner. So I think that needs to be made mention that you know, we've gone from 30 days to 15. So there might be a little bit of that involved in what these figures are representing. So that's just my comments. I also just want to say I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. It's good to get this kind of information.
Thank you. Any other concerns, comments, commissioners? Again, I want to echo Commissioner Clark's kudos to your department and to Sonia and her team. Not an easy job. Not an easy job at all, but the man are you coming through with glory. So thank you so much. And again, I know that you were out for training last week. I know that you're going for training this afternoon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir.
So we're not going to hold you up, but I do appreciate you breaking out that GRT and tracking it. So because with a hospital, And actually, when we were talking about this at the agenda meeting, Manager Fuentes brought up not only the Alzheimer, but the wastewater treatment plant is in that $1 million, and we dropped down by a quarter of $1,000,000. And now with the hospital, we can expect possibly unreality to rear its wonderful head again and go spiking our GRT with a $29-30 million project in our backyard. But we got to run our city on the reality of what it is when we don't have construction jobs. So I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Drive carefully.
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Okay, I will need a motion to accept the quarterly report as presented by Ms. Torres.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the quarterly report as submitted by Melissa Torres, our finance director. This is for the first quarter of 2017-18.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Clark. Any further concerns, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item, and I believe, have we done everything? Yes. Is going to be the automatic meter reading project. I'm going to suggest, because this is probably going to take a little bit of time, and I don't want to stop in the middle of it as we're going through it. I'd like to take a 3-minute break and then come back, and that will be on the agenda, so we can go right through it without stopping, as people have to look ahead. Thank you for bearing with us for that short recess. We are moving on with our agenda. We are back in session. The last item beg your pardon, is unfinished business, discussion action, automated meter reading project for electric and water system, Year Out Energy Services Company, and our initial presenter will be Tracy Burnett, our grant projects coordinator. Obviously, we have Manager Fuentes here. If the commission has any questions from the PUAB, we have the chair and vice chair here. We have Yesco here, and we have Mark Valenzuela, who is one of our financial consultants to the city, on the phone as well. So, Tracy, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. We stand before you today in hopes that you will accept and approve for both Manager Fuentes and staff to proceed forward with the Yesco self-funding contract and the funding options as they'll be presented. I think our commission action form shows a history of the presentations, the workshops, and getting up in front of the PUAB, involving the public as well as the commission. At this time, I'd like to turn everything over to Scott with Yesco and let them move forward with our presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. Thank you so much for having us here this morning. This has been a 2-year journey and in the process. So our last meeting we had with the PUAB, they made the recommendation to bring this to the Commission, and we'll start with the next slide. So what we're going to look at is the findings of the investment grade audit that we did, review of the project benefits, and the final approved scope that the PUAB said to move forward with. So what we did, as you know, over the last couple of months, we brought in our meter auditing team, and the baseline water loss, it was 26.6%. Next slide, please.
Scott, just
Yes, sir.
I'm going to interrupt you 1 second. Would you feel more comfortable in going through your entire presentation and then having the commissioners, if there are any questions, ask them, or stop you as you bring up points that need clarification?
I said we're going to run through this real quick, and then at the very end, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very
Things
good.
go out that
Okay.
way. So what we did, one of the questions that the PUAB had to us is, what was the meter population that we tested? And so basically we tested a population very similar to what you have in the ground, so that it was a very accurate test. Next slide, please. So the accuracy results, as you can see, one of the issues that the PUAB had, and it was a great discussion, was, some of these meters look like they're pretty accurate, and that's, in some cases when you're blowing water fast through them, they're accurate, but the result is your low flow and medium flow is where you're losing money. That's not being counted, because mechanical meters are bumped up, and so that's where you really see remember, we're trying to create a project here that self-funds, and we're looking at where the accuracies would develop a cash flow positive scenario, so this pays for itself without any funds out of the city's budget. So that's the whole point of doing this whole exercise. So it's not really going to, again, with the accuracies and the actual meters that will be put in have almost a 99% accuracy level. So what we're guaranteeing allows a baseline and a cushion for the city to make sure that their revenue is high. Next one. So what the turnkey project is, it's 3,400 water meters with 100 remote disconnect valves and 5,015 electric meters. Now, each of these meters, there's been a lot of discussion about meters and costs and pricing and all those things. We had staff review 4 different vendors, and then we put 2 of them, as we say, we made them walk the plank to come up with the best pricing. And then what we did is we worked even additionally as we saw what the interest rate would be on this, and then we went to everybody and said, sharpen your pencils, and we were able to lower the cost by an additional almost $200,000 to this number here, which is $5,144,000 and 302. So what this does is a full turnkey. Now, under the EMNRD and under the Energy Savings Performance Contract statutes, there's no change orders to this. This is one firm price of the entire project. So what it does is it includes a full integration of your billing platform. It works for better and quicker, faster, and more accurate customer service. It's going to allow your solar customers to access the whole program, and it's going to assure the constituents that they're actually getting what they pay for. In other words, the amount of consumption will be equal to what they're paying for now. Next slide. It'll also really help with improved operations. One of the issues that in all of this is, especially installing this, you're going to get a lot more data than you'd ever have before. So right now they're being read by hand. In this scenario, you press a button, it's read through the internet. And so we were asked by council about 1.5 years ago to see if we could actually get the electric meters to work with the water meters. And so we took that to heart. We redeveloped our scope. So this scope will actually, one reading system will read both water and electric. So that will actually help. Now on the electric side, it's a lot more complicated, but a lot more value to it. Now, we can measure the water side easier because the electric side has a lot of variables to it. So the way we're getting this funded is through the savings or the revenue uptick from the water meters themselves. That way there's only one M&V category, so we can actually maintain this for a lot less dollars than if it's the electric side. Now, it was a complicated way of doing it, but it actually saves the city a lot of money to do it that way. Now remember, this is replacing 5,000 electric meters. So that's a pretty big number there. Next. So, and the other side, and I agree with what's been said previous, is how do you fix what's in front of the meter? And it was, Smith Engineering put together a pretty great study that said, hey, we need about $20 million worth of work to be done. Well, part of it is this process. Meters are different now. Meters are like an endpoint of a control system. So it's going to tell you a lot of information. You'll be able to see your system in near real time. So if there is a leak, it's going to flag it. You'll be able to use the mobile leak detection system that comes with this program to then find out where the bigger leaks are. And that's another, and that's revenue we're not guaranteeing. That's revenue in your pocket as you fix it yourself. But you'll be able to see it. And so to be more, instead of being reactive and doing emergency repairs, you'll see where those leaks are. Now, what happens is the meters tell you what's happening sort of from that group, but then you take the mobile leak detection unit, you run it around to figure out where that actual leak is. So that's going to help a lot. So it's going to assemble the data that you have. That's going to show you areas that will benefit from that repair. And then you'll know what size pipe to use. You'll know whether you have to dig the street up and things like that. So there's a lot of value to the leak detection side of it. But anything you fix with that are dollars back in your pocket, which is great. But this will show you how to do it. Next one. So outage detection and restoration on the electric side and water side are a big deal. You know, your truck rolls here are pretty costly. We go look at what these costs were. We had the water folks look at what their costs were. So with the Riva Analytics, now to tell you what's happening here, you have a water meter, electric meter, and then you have what's called Riva, which is by Itron, and that is actually the reading device that goes onto each of these meters, and that's what goes to a Cisco grid router, and that's going to read the data from the meter itself. So the way this works, it's going to be sort of going both ways. On the electric side, if there's outages, you're going to know immediately. So that way Bo and his crew get on top of that much quicker if there's happening there. The other side of it is that the Riva Analytics will let you know how to energize your lines. So you can then, if you have a lot of transformer issues here, a lot of issues on the electric side that need to be repaired, it'll help alleviate overheating and things like that, because you'll see that on the Riva network. So there's a lot of unique things on the electric side that you get with this program. And again, that's being paid for by the water savings right now, because until we see the data on the electric side savings, which will be a stipulated value, then you can pay that back starting from the second year, if you choose to. So it's more of an internal trade-out for costs. Next one. So again, you know, we've been down, we wanted to sort of show the milestone dates of what we've done so far, and what we've looked at, and understanding in the audit work that we do, we have to do a lot of testing on our part. And so we've been down this road a couple of times. Right now, Silver City is about 18% above their revenue where they were going to be, even what we judged it to be, so they're doing really great. Roswell is installing right now, and each sort of sector of that is looking a lot more healthy. So in here, as you know, we've gone down these different times. With the QAB, we brought the investment grade audit to them and had them take a look at it, and then we answered their questions on a secondary meeting, and then that brought us here today. Next slide. So what this meeting was also about was, what we did is we presented this pro forma of costs to Juan. Juan then presented those costs to George K. Baum, which is your finance consultant. And then they took it from there, and they developed a pro forma that shows how the project gets paid for. Should we go on with, do you have questions? Answer any questions?
Yeah, just a lot of knowledge and information for the commission to, if they want to respond to. So from what we have heard so far, any questions, concerns? Commissioner Clark.
I'm not sure I'm ready to get started yet.
Okay.
Because
I can ask a throwaway question if you want to.
I'll ask a throwaway question. I've gone through these numbers, and because I couldn't make it pencil, I asked two other people who happened to be in this audience, and they independently did numbers, and none of us can pencil this out. And the biggest pencil problem I have is this loan amount. When you add the interest onto it, and then you add those extra dollars for the information going into the cloud, and what's it called, Jeff? The storage system, and then what was the other one that you have to calibrate? Yeah. When you add those onto it, the $9 million that is projected for savings, which I have a difficult time believing that also, is going to our cost with the loan, and our money out of our pocket, which is going to be about 1.6 million, 1.7 million over 20 years. We're not getting any benefit. I just can't find the benefit of this. And I'm happy to go through these numbers. I've got tons of other questions, but at the end of the day, I can't come up with any benefit to the city at all. The benefit I would see to the city is if we do the meters ourselves, and then that revenue comes directly to us, and then instead of being used for the loan itself. And I appreciate the loan guarantee idea, that it would all be paid for, but, you know, I don't see that 26.6% of the loss is all attributed to meters.
It's not.
I've seen a lot of loss in our pipes,
Mhm.
so I don't know if that projection is going to work. I don't see 4,383 residential houses putting water into our system for revenue when we have 3,247 houses occupied. So I think we've got some misnumbers there. I'm concerned about some of the electric meters going in, that the houses won't be able to handle it with the new meters, so they'll be condemned and they'll have to rewire themselves to put the new meters on. We haven't talked about that, our cost to our customers. And I think there's just a lot of numbers that you haven't given us, except for the full value of everything. And, you know, some of the numbers I got from one of the persons in this audience it has a degree in engineering, or has an engineering background, and went through and gave me all of the numbers and figures for the amount of meters that we were going to put in, and even his stuff didn't pencil out. We're still coming in about $2.5 million. I don't know where the 5.1's coming from.
Commissioner Clark, maybe at this particular point, it might be great question. And maybe, since you're talking about dollars,
I'm talking about dollars.
and maybe we should get, Mark, you there? Mark, are you still? Okay, did you hear Commissioner Clark's concerns and some of the questions? And I thought that maybe some of those questions you might want to start to deal with and walk us through, or maybe
Mayor, Commissioners, maybe since some of the questions are financial related, and Scott went over just kind of the project, and maybe Mark, if we can have Mark go through his presentation.
Okay.
And then, since you heard both presentations, then both can kind of chime in on any of the questions that may apply to them.
Thank you.
So, Mark, can you go ahead and proceed forward with your presentation?
Mark, just hold on one second. George?
Before we get into the numbers, I did ask Mayor Green if I could be permitted to speak on this. I have to admit, this project has been by far the most contentious issue that has come before the Public Utilities Advisory Board. And I wanted to come in and kind of summarize what we went through on this. You really can't get the full impact of this just by reading the board's minutes. We had a lot of questions on it, a lot of misgivings. Some of the board members are very dubious about the numbers that have been presented. I do have to thank Scott and the other YESCO people for keeping on coming back and bringing us more information as we asked for it. We hammered this thing out at length, and we had some interesting discussions over it. There are several things that can be done here. I mean, if we wanted to realize the savings, if that was our main concern, we can go out, purchase a bunch of new meters, especially the water meters, install them ourselves, and realize a substantial savings or a substantial increase in revenue on the water side. That would be simple. It could be done in-house, and it could be done at a minimal cost. Now, we would still have the issue with reading the meters and everything that we've had before, but that would boost our revenue. Okay. Now, and one of the other issues that came up was all of the problems we have had in the past with getting the meters read properly, both on the electric side and the water side. Now, going with an automatic meter reading system, yes, that does help with those issues, and there are a lot of other benefits to the customers and to the city on this. There are other revenue savings and that have been explained through the presentations that come about with being able to immediately know when there are issues with the water or the electric, the saved calls and everything else. There is an additional savings that can be realized there. But again, and as it was pointed out, this can be done, in-house over a period of years. The problem with doing anything in-house, there are two issues involved. First of all, if it's done in over a period of years, 5 years, I think Aztec, we said they've been working on theirs for 10 years. Well, when you do that, then you have to maintain 2 systems over that entire time. You have to have your meter readers out there, and you have to have the AMI system in place. And you're paying all of those AMI maintenance fees for that entire period of time, even though only a fraction of your meters are hooked up through that system. So, yes, you are making a savings, there is an apparent savings over that period of time, but in fact there is an additional cost because you're running 2 separate systems during that time. Okay. The other issue is, again, doing an in-house problem is, things happen. You don't know what's going to happen during that time, what other issues are going to come up, what other expenses are going to occur, and when you do it in-house, you have to be prepared to accept those additional costs. When I was younger, I did a lot of do-it-yourself projects, and I know, on a much smaller scale, things happen. As we, got older and more financially stable, I find it much easier to hire somebody to do it and make sure it is done correctly and not have to run into all of those problems that can creep into even the simplest project. Pros and cons. Like I said, we hammered this out over and over, and even those of us who voted to forward the project to you aren't 100% convinced on this. I mean, it is a huge price tag, and I think that bothers a lot of us. But when you look at it from a higher perspective, rather than just actual monetary savings, we are managing our utility systems in the same way, using the same tools that we did when those utility systems were installed years ago. Our utility departments manage our water, electric, sewer by going out and looking at them. It's eyeballs on the system. And like I said, exactly the same way it was done when they were installed years and years ago. What installing a system like this does is it brings the management of the utilities into the 21st century. And this is something you can't measure just in dollars and cents. It gives and it's going to be a challenge for the water and the electric departments to actually learn how to use these new tools and to use them effectively. There's going to be a learning curve there, but the end result is we were going to have a much better control over these utilities. We know immediately when transformers are having issues. We know immediately when power goes out to a building, even if the residents aren't home. We can get back, we can respond to emergencies, and again, do this in a manner consistent with the technology available. And I think when a town shows a willingness to go and upgrade to a system that utilizes currently available technology, it tells other people that this is a progressive town, that we're looking toward the future, and we're not content to do things the way we have done for the last 50 or 80 years. I mean, we did that with the solar farm. You know, that was something we wanted to do to show that we are a modern community. There are some critics in the community that, you know, think just because we're a small town, we should be just like, you know, Mayberry RFD, and everything should stay in the relative Stone Ages, just because we don't want to spend the money. Okay. I don't think that's the kind of image we want to present. I'm not going to go in any further on this. I just wanted to let you know that, again, there are other ways to do this, though I don't see where the funding on it, doing it ourselves, is that easy to come by. There's no money out there. And if we will need to borrow money, I think borrowing the money to fix the water lines is a better use of our borrowing capacity. This is a way to fund the project and not affect our ability to go out there and deal with the other issues that we need to deal with. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, your board, for all the hours put in to get us to this particular point. Mark, I guess you've heard Commissioner Clark, you've heard Scott's presentation, you heard George Zagetti speak as one of the representatives, wasn't speaking for the board, but my memory serves me correctly, the utility board forwarded this to the commission on a 3-2 vote, 3 in favor, 2 against, but it was a cautionary vote. It was not 100% supportive of the 3 people. They still had concerns. So where we are right now is monies. Let's talk dollars and if this is feasible to do.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I know that you have a presentation that's in front of you, Mayor. And for the record, this is Mark Valenzuela. I serve as the advisor to you and to the commission and to your seat. So my fiduciary is to you, and not necessarily the project per se. We do have experience. Our firm does have experience working with these types of projects, and I think Mr. Griffith had talked about the Silver City project, which we were advisors to Silver City as well, so I do have some background from that project as well. Mayor, if I might, I've provided you information on the Public Facility Energy Efficiency Act, which has created this opportunity. I am not going to take you through it. I trust that you all have gone through that, unless you or one of the commissioners wants me to take you through it. I think based on the questions and the comments that I've been hearing, I would direct you to page 8, and we can just jump into the structure, if that's okay. Unless there are questions on the act, I'm happy to answer
Do any commissioners have any questions of Mark on
I have
that?
one.
Commissioner
Just one.
Clark.
Thanks, Mark. My question is this, that the savings it reads the savings must meet or exceed costs. So that's one of my arguments, because if I extend and amortize this loan out and then add that extra 1.9 million that might come out of our pockets for this extra services that we need, it doesn't really seem that we're saving much, and we're really not saving anything because we're generating revenue by having these new meters in. So the wording is kind of weird. But it just seems to me that we have to prove that we're exceeding what the costs are going to be, and I just don't see it. and you put this 7.2 together, 7.4, depending on what our interest rate's going to be, and you add that 1.9 onto it, then the 9 million that they say we're going to have in revenue over 20 years is less than the cost to the city.
Yes, ma'am. So if I could address sort of generally, and then we can get into the details if that's okay.
Thanks.
And I appreciate you're reading off of slide 9. If I could just very quickly jump back to slide 8, just so we all kind of understand the structure we're talking about. In essence, the Act provides the opportunity for a qualified provider, in this case it would be YESCO, to come in and install and construct these improvements. And Commissioner, as you've mentioned, take the opportunity to generate, and you're right, it's not savings per se. What it is the revenue loss to your current system. It's water that goes unbilled for currently. And so, of course, the idea here is that with new, higher performing water meters, you will capture the number of gallons that are moving through those pipes and then accurately bill for those gallons that are running through those pipes. And therefore, this idea of savings, and I'm using the quote sort of thing with my fingers, savings is really just excess or additional revenue that the system is generating that it was formerly losing. And with that savings, you're absolutely right. That savings, the state act contemplates that those savings would pay for all of those improvements, and ideally provide some additional revenue back to the city that is using the product or this structure. In addition, and I know you asked this question earlier, is what is the benefit to the city? And in essence, you're taking the opportunity to improve your infrastructure at little cost to the city. And again, that's sort of relative, right? Because these aren't necessarily savings; these are just collecting the actual revenue that you should be collecting. So you can look at it from that perspective, that those losses that the system is currently undertaking, maybe that's the wrong word, are now becoming positive rather than negative. And it's that money that pays us back. And so in going through the process, that act allows you to work with somebody like YESCO to do that. Originally, the act contemplated that the energy provider, the qualified provider, would also provide the financing to you through what is called a lease purchase agreement or an installment contract, which frankly looks a lot like a bond. It's just a different structure. And so what happens in the case of a lease purchase agreement, the city would undertake a financing arrangement that was based on the cost of capital from the provider. And that's a private company that would be providing you $5.2 million of financing in essence, because they're fronting the cost to do the improvements. And they build in their own margin from a cost of funds perspective. And so what I've advised my clients, and what I would certainly advise you as well, is that based on you being a governmental entity, based on your ability to borrow tax-free, the borrowing cost for this project, should you choose to go forward, would be lower if you took on the financing yourself. Now, having said that, I don't think, and YESCO can certainly comment on this, I don't think YESCO has a cost of funds in their numbers. I think they're just looking at $5.2 million transaction and how that might amortize. Actually, that's not correct. They do have a cost of funds in their numbers, so they're amortizing over 20 years. I think, in my view, that you could probably lower that cost of funds, and there may be a little bit more savings there. Excuse me. So that's slide 8, and now let me move to slide 9, which is where the real numbers are here, just to give you a perspective. So YESCO provided us with their pro formas, and I trust that you all have seen those, of what and again, I use quotes here, the savings would be on the sewer and the water system. They've also added in the savings to your staff time. So there's going to be O&M savings as well. And so we've calculated those numbers to determine what that would look like, and we've dissected them to some degree. Again, we're not, from our view, we're accepting YESCO's numbers because they've completed this audit, and we haven't, so we have to rely on their numbers. And I think the question was asked earlier about what goes into that. And so generally, from a high level on this project, what's being put into this $5.2 million number is replacement of the water and the electric meters together. And then the savings from the water system are in essence paying off both of those. If I'm wrong, YESCO can stand up and tell me if I'm wrong about that, but that's how I see the transaction. So in other words, you're not counting on any savings from the electrical meters, but you're getting an improved electrical meter system from the project. So, having said that, we received YESCO's numbers, and we questioned a couple of areas, and I think this is an area for the commission to have, if you choose to go forward with the project, I think this is an area for the commission to have that negotiation with YESCO. As you pointed out, there's an escalation on these savings numbers. That escalation is based in part on a perspective that the commission would be increasing their rate structure over time at a certain percentage, 3% per year. We received the numbers. We gave them a haircut. We didn't allow for the growth like YESCO was showing, and we put the numbers that are in front of you on slide 9. So our numbers show, again, with a slight haircut to what YESCO provided, is that the savings over time would generate roughly 9.1 million. And the financing that you would have to do would also have to escalate similar to the savings, so that the city of TRC is not out any dollars for the bond financing. Our cost of money in this scenario, and it's very conservative, is 3.4% for 20 years. That would be a tax-exempt rate. So compared to the debt, and again, we're using YESCO's IGA numbers, their investment grade audit numbers. At the end of that, on the first front years, you do have minor savings or minor additional incremental revenue over the debt. The way we have structured this to be more conservative, and over time that escalates, the savings would escalate further. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I will say again, we have not put any savings from the electrical side because we do not have those numbers. But again, we feel like this is more conservative than what YESCO is providing. Let me stop there and answer any questions that anybody, mayor or the commissioner may have.
Thank you, Mark. Other questions, concerns? I'll roll up.
So,
This is Commissioner Clark, Mark.
again, of course, so we're taking YESCO's numbers and we're working with them. It's their numbers that I'm questioning. And if I remember correctly, Steve, it was me and Commissioner Richter that sent you away and asked you to come back with a cost-benefit analysis, which we didn't get. We got a projection of monies into the future, but you didn't provide us with what a cost-benefit analysis is, which is the cost of the equipment, the cost of the meters, the cost of installation, the cost of the computers, and everything else that's necessary, so that we could look at what our hard costs really are. And that's what I keep saying. I come up with hard costs somewhere around $2.5 million. If it's 5.1, where's that other money? Or do I have wrong costs? So that's what we asked you to provide for us, and if I remember correctly, you said you would do so. This is not it.
So what we provided inside the IGA was a detailed cost analysis of every part of the project. So that was given to the PUAB in the investment grade audit. So do you not have that?
No.
Okay, so that was presented to the PUAB, and I thought they might have shared it with Tricia. I don't know. So, Alex, you want to address for the...
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. We brought printout copies, just in case this came up, of a breakdown of the fees. Again, this was all in the investment grade audit report, which has been in the city's hands for quite some time. It's actually at the state level being reviewed by the state engineer as well, actively. But we have it here. I can pass them out. You can review them. But it breaks it down. And in fact, let me just hand these out and you can take a look.
If I may, well, the commission is reviewing this, and I hate when this happens. I think I speak for all of us to take a look at a two-page document with a lot of numbers and expect to digest it and understand it in 30 seconds. But I do have a question, and maybe Scott and or George, you could please help me out with this. This is the, unless I've been sleeping through all of the workshops and the commission presentations, please correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first time I have heard of a rate increase. I thought the whole, just to give you a quick back history, I bumped into Tracy last night. She was making a presentation in front of the water board, and there's $25 million worth to give out, $75 million worth of applications. The first question the board asked each presenter was, what are your water rates? And when they got to T or C, their eyes rolled back in their head, because we're not in the 21st century, which is great for our citizens, but it's bad for the city to try to operate and replace these pipelines. So I was under the assumption that the city could do two things. We could raise our water rates to bring them into, theoretically, reality of what the marketplace is, what is the value of this commodity, or we could go with performance contracting, where the city did not have to put forth money, and that the entire project would be funded by the increased revenue generated by a more efficient system. It's not going to capture the leak that's 100 feet from the meter, but it might tell us that there is a leak 100 feet from the meter. So please, correct me if I'm wrong, and George, please feel to jump in, or Scott. Was there ever a talk of a rate increase? I never heard of it. So please tell me that I fell asleep during that meeting, or this is something that has been added because, to Commissioner Clark's point, the numbers don't work. But if we increase the rates to our citizens, now it starts to make sense. Please.
Okay, I think what, when we have, and the PUAB has in the past, we have reviewed the rates for the solid waste and for the wastewater. Part of that rate review and has been a stipulation that those rates increase 5% every year. So now, the board has not gotten around to reviewing the rates for water or electricity yet, but when that happens, it is our intention that that automatic 5% increase will be added to the rate structure on those as well. Okay. It's just that we have not gotten around to dealing with the water department rates at this time.
So, George, correct me if I'm wrong. This presentation and these numbers are on the assumption that the commission is going to vote for a rate increase. And if you take that assumption away, does that not change the whole dynamic of the project?
Well, that's what the the data that's presented for you by Mark shows that they've taken that that automatic rate increase out.
So Mark?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I guess you heard my question, I guess you heard my answer, and then the last statement that George said is that your analysis, I'm not going to use support of the project because you're under contract to the city, but your analysis of this has not included the 3% projected rate increase that at some particular time might be put forth from the Public Utility Advisory Board and brought to the commission. Is that correct?
The analysis that we're using includes rate increases. And again, these are YESCO's numbers that we're using, and we've, again, scaled them back. So you see on slide 9, for the first 10 years, you're seeing a 5% growth rate year over year.
Mm-hmm.
And then it drops back down to 3% year over year. And so where that growth rate comes from is partially a 3% increase year over year on the rate structure, but the other side of that is the projected sort of the delta between what you were not collecting and the improvement in efficiency on the system.
Mm-hmm. Have you, Mark, and I beg your pardon, if any commissioner wants to jump in, I'll shut up, but I just have two quick questions. Have you considered, I gave actually Manager Fuentes a newspaper article yesterday, and I didn't realize that there was a census of 2016, and that census has T or C down by another 400 people. We went from 6,432 to 6,000 and something. So have you considered decreasing population possibly? And number two, if now people will be billed for actually what they are using, and that's, I don't think anyone has an objection to that, that they, rather than taking a 5-minute hot shower, they might take a 3-minute hot shower to save that water bill, which is increasing, not by rates that I was given to understand, but just by now they're being billed for what they're actually using. Has that been factored in at all, that there might be a per capita lower usage of gallons of water? Is that factored in at all also?
Mayor, in my numbers it is not. However, I can't speak to YESCO. They may have factored in, that response to increasing collections of the actual usage.
Right.
They would have to answer that question.
All right, the gentleman just went to the microphone, so he's going to answer it for us. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Could you introduce yourself to the commission so we call you by your right name?
Yes, sir. My name's Alex Montano. I basically manage the project development department, the engineering staff. So you're exactly right. The natural behavior will cause end users to adjust consumption if they start to see their bills go up. That's just inherent to human beings. And so we do factor that in. So when we do our analysis, we determine, based on the meter testing that was done and where the new meter accuracies are going to be guaranteed, that delta in potential additional billable gallons, and then we shave 5% off of that number to account for a 5% conservation factor that will naturally occur by end users. It may be 4%, maybe 6%, but it's just a number that we put in there to allow for some of that fluctuation, if that answers that question. And then I would also add that in regards to the rate escalation, we all know that utilities are not getting cheaper, particularly water and sewer. They have been underpriced notoriously across the U.S. for quite some time. And all of the projects that we do that are beyond just water and sewer, we do a lot of energy-focused projects, renewables. Utilities will always get higher as we run out of resources and things of that nature. The PUAB had already recommended that 5% on the wastewater side, on the sewer side, not on the water side. And there hasn't been any recommendation yet made on the water, but as Mr. Seghetti was mentioning, it's likely in the cards to happen. Our analysis used 3% across the board so that we were below what the projections were for the city, so that there would be some upside to the city beyond what the guarantee. So I also want to address Commissioner Clark's comment, in that, yes, the city's not going to get rich off this project. That's never the intent of these projects. It's to find the necessary amount of savings or revenue to fund the improvements that will bring you guys to the next wave of technology out there without having to come out of pocket yourselves. If there's any additional benefit, which there will be because we try to be conservative in our numbers, that goes directly to the city. We have no piece in that. We don't share in those benefits. We try to engineer our solution so that we'd be happy if it was $1 positive after 20 years, because that's really all you need to fund the project. Any additional benefit is in your guys' port. I mean, it goes directly to the city. So I don't know if that makes sense.
I appreciate that. The current CPI index is 2.2%. Why would I want to raise my rates to my people here 5%? They would be making less money on a yearly basis than the inflation rate for them. Why would I want to charge them 5% instead of 2.2?
Good question. So the city has already put in place the 5% escalation prior to this project.
I was there.
Okay. And that's just on the sewer side, right?
I understand that.
But it's a wonderful question.
Excuse me if I may.
Sure.
Manager Fuentes, and I'll just talk for a second. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. Could you please just say what you said again so I'm up to speed?
The CPI index?
Yeah, what was your question?
The consumer price index is 2.2%. Why would I approve a 5% raise? Now, I know why we did in wastewater, because it had been 15 years since we raised that rate. But why would I raise it consistently more than a CPI index to the people who live in this community, who are most of them on a fixed income? They would have less available money to go to the grocery store, because they'd be giving it all to us so that we could give it to the loan to pay back that we're getting very little value for at the end of the day, except for the new meters.
Right.
Why would they do that?
That's a challenging question to answer, and I don't know that I have a great response to it other than water and sewer is typically heavily underpriced from what it actually is costing the city to deliver those services. You know, if you look at historically what rates are doing, you can look at PNM or any electric provider, they're going up, 6% annually on average. Water is even projected to do more than that as it becomes more of a scarcity, right? So I can't answer that specifically because that's more of a personal kind of question. Why would I want to do that to others? But the truth is that we all have to, because utilities will not get cheaper. I mean, it's impossible for them to get cheaper, and we need to plan for that. But you guys have an obligation to deliver services to your city, and if it costs a little bit of money to do that, I mean, that's part of the deal.
And if I may, Alex, I want to address Commissioner Clark. Valid concerns. On the waste, and you might not know this, so this is just information. We applied to USDA for a grant for improvements of our wastewater treatment plant because it was out of compliance by federal changing of their requirements. And one of the things that the loan, and we are finding as we look for sources of money, that you can't take profit from the electric division to prop up the wastewater division. It must stand on its own, which means it must generate enough revenue to pay all expenses, have the whoops factor, the rainy day fund. If you're going to borrow money, the borrowed money has to be repaid out of that enterprise fund. So to Commissioner Clark's point, that's why we raised the rates on wastewater, because we couldn't get our hands on $7 to $8 million project, and we had to take out a loan. It was a loan grant, and that loan had to be guaranteed by the revenue generated by that enterprise fund. So what I guess we're really talking about is this thing with the rate increase is really hitting, I think, two commissioners pretty hard. So my question is this: if we took the rate increase away, if we took it out of the equation, do we have a viable project that is not going to cost the city or its citizens a dime?
The answer is yes. It would just be of lesser scope. So, and what I mean by that, the water is subsidizing the electric system. You are going to have a great benefit to the city for this new electric infrastructure both on the operational side and potentially what history has shown is on the revenue side as well. There's no funds being carried to cash flow this project with that extra work on the electric. And a lot of that is being carried through water and then escalating it at a conservative 3% rate annually. You take that escalation out, you still have very likely a strong water-only project. You would just be sacrificing the electric component of the project scope or a portion of it. So that's really what the city's agreeing to in terms of, we understand that we're taking on this agreement of escalating 3%, but we also understand that we're not accounting for all this additional benefit on the electric side, which is really probably greater than what that 3% benefit is. And so, but that's part of it's how these are structured so that there's minimal risk to the city in borrowing more than necessary or billing more than necessary, that at the end of the day, it cash flows positive and you get all the additional benefits that the project brings.
So would I be correct then in the assumption that if we would change out the meters and people are going to be billed for a more accurate consumption of what they're actually using, that would also then reflect in the outbound of the wastewater? Is that a fair statement?
That is part of the analysis, yes, sir.
So that captured additional revenue from the outbound, from the wastewater, because we are capturing a real number that moves into the home. We're getting more money coming out of the home as well.
You are absolutely correct, and the benefit is actually not quite as great as it could be, because the way that the city bills on sewer currently is they take the lowest 3 months, the winter consumption, and that sets the sewer consumption for the year. So even though consumption in the summer goes way up when people irrigate and all those other things, likely most of the time that water doesn't make it back into the wastewater system. Some does, but a lot of it doesn't. And so you're not billing that extra water consumption in the summer. So our analysis had to account for that, where we had to look at water and sewer separately to ensure that we were not overestimating the amount of benefit to the city on sewer, because really it's only that additional bump you're going to get in those lowest 3 months. Now there's still a benefit, it's just not as great as what it would be in the summertime, if that makes sense.
So, and my final question is, what I heard is that without a rate increase, the scope or the magnitude or the size, whatever you want to call it, of this project doesn't work. It would have to be pared down and looked at again. Is that correct?
I'd say that's a fair, yes.
I have no further.
So the construction fees, you got subcontracted labor of $3,273,000. How much profit is built into that for the subcontractors?
None. That's the price to us.
That's the price to us.
Right.
Okay. So then you've built into yourselves $790,000 worth of profit.
So 5% of that is contingency. That's money that's monitored, and it's meant to address unforeseen conditions. Now, there's some foreseen conditions which are shown on the other document, and it says site conditions, foreseen. These are known items that we're accounting for, or I should say our subcontracted partners are also accounting for, that will need to be addressed during installation. Okay. There's always unforeseen. There's stuff underneath the seat, underneath the streets, or wherever you encounter. But there's things that you do not know until you are into construction. And so we show 5% contingency there, and that needs to be there. And the reason that needs to be there is because of the type of contracting that this project is, and that there are no change orders. We are not allowed to come back to the city at any point and say, ooh, we messed up. We need more money to accomplish this. We can only go to the bank once. And so that 5% there is meant to address those unforeseen conditions, and that's tracked and monitored and delivered to you on reports to show where that money is going, and any unused contingency at the end of the project can get applied toward additional scope, however you guys would want to use it.
You know, if it were my recommendation at this particular point, because we just barely got this today, and I've seen us before when we've got something, just put on our laps without time to digest it, to put it off. because I can't make a decision for my people on $5.1 million that will turn into 8 or 9 in 20 years in 5 minutes. And I really think that it's imperative that this information be given back to our PUA board, because they did not have time to digest these costs, and they will understand them far better than I will.
Both these documents were in the PUAB's packet. They've reviewed these
They're
extensively.
saying no. They're saying no. They're shaking their head no.
George, could you come to me so they can capture your voice, please? Thank you.
As Jeff mentioned before, the copy that we received was labeled as a draft, and I would have to compare this to the one we have in our hands to see if there are any substantial differences in the two. But the numbers, again, just looking at it, I cannot tell you, but they don't appear to be substantially different from the copy we had.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we have seen this, and, we did crank through the numbers, and I got a lot of the same numbers that you presented, Commissioner Clark. And again, those numbers are the concerns that we expressed when we did forward this project back to the City Commission.
So you forwarded your concerns to us so we could be concerned instead.
Well, you know,
Passing this concerns, yeah.
we are an advisory board, and you are the decision makers, and, you know.
Thank you, George.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mark?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so question. Your analysis is with the consideration of the projected rate increase.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so at the end of the day, what is the bottom line that the city owes someone either yearly or monthly? What is that number going to be, number one? And number two, then I want to know what is the value of the performance bond that YESCO is going to take out to guarantee this, and if those numbers are exactly the same.
Okay. Sure. So the annual payment on slide 9, we show that totaling $7.4 million based on the current size of the project at the 5.1. And if I might jump back to one of your questions earlier, because I was listening to the communication and I was running numbers at the same time. So, taking out any rate growth on the numbers, right now you see the bottom line number on slide 9 at $9.1 million. That's what the projected savings would be. Taking out any growth, rate growth, I'm not talking about the delta growth that you're going to have in collections of sort of the added value of collections over time. So with zero growth, that bottom line is $6.5 million. So if you compare the 6.5 to the 7.4 debt, you're still about $1 million short there. That's at zero growth over 20 years on the rate structure. Now, I ran another scenario, sort of tying back to Commissioner Clark's point about inflation and CPI. And if you grew the revenues, if the commission were to put in an inflationary CPI automatic rate adjustment every year, I'm only using 1.5% for that number. Your total revenues would be $7.1 million, so that gets you much closer to the total debt structure of $7.4 million. I'm hopeful that that's helpful to better sort of provide greater awareness of how this debt might relate to the savings. So you're getting closer to break even at a 1.5% CPI growth rate.
Okay, thank you.
Now, having said that, the YESCO guarantee is on the performance of the meters. So if the meters aren't performing at least 97%, I think 90, and they can correct me, 90%, 97% efficiency, and and capturing that, the gallons of water that are moving through that meter, then they write you a check for the difference every year. Now, as you all mentioned, there could be leaks in the system somewhere else, and I'm not certain. I'd ask yes to this question, whether those leaks add any value or take away value. So I'm hopeful, Mayor, that I answered your question, and I would turn it over to Yesko to provide more clarity.
Additional questions, concerns? I think Commissioner Clark has a valid point. I do not like to get stuff dumped in my lap. And then to make a decision of this magnitude that it will affect our citizens one way or another. I mean, in principle, I will go on record as saying the concept I love. I absolutely love the concept to modernize and be efficient, and it will help staff perform their job as well. To Commissioner Clark's point, or I guess Mr. Dornbush's point, if we do it ourselves, it is a slow, painful process. If we go out and borrow money, that loan then becomes, from what I've been given to understand, against our debt limit. And right now,
That might be a good question for Mark.
yeah, Mark, am I correct that if we go out and borrow money from the bank and to do this in-house, then that goes against our capacity if, God forbid, something very, 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 very serious happens and we've got to get our hands on $3 to $4 million, which we don't have in the bank. We've got to go out to the bank and borrow it. Well, if we borrow for this, then we're getting really near the cap of our debt limit and our capability to borrow. If we go the bond route, this does not, am I correct that this is not held against the city's capacity to borrow money because it is being guaranteed it's being guaranteed on the backside by a guaranteed bond that those savings are going to be there. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. You have that right. So, if the city were to take out a loan and pledge its gross receipts tax, you would be taking away from your future available capacity to do something in the future from the same revenue. If you do the latter and you tie it to the savings, then you leave that, you have more capacity. Yes, you're correct. Everybody confused.
No. And also, I have heard that someone has come up with another idea. And that idea would be for people who are probably in a substantial income bracket to go out and buy the meters and turn around and lease them to the city. And therefore, they would take all the tax advantages that something like that would offer them, and it would be a way of possibly accomplishing the same thing, but through a different avenue. In your dealings with these energy performance contracts, has leasing of the meter or the product that they're dealing with, trying to make more efficient, have you ever dealt with that at all, and could you comment on it, if so?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have dealt with it, and it ultimately comes back to the same question about what is the cost of financing that they're including in that lease agreement, relative to the tax-free borrowing that the city can accomplish.
Okay.
But yes, we've seen it. It can work. Again, it's just a matter of price.
Okay.
That's not a solar.
Thank you.
That's not a solar plant.
Yeah, purchase power agreement. Yeah.
So I have a little story. So I was in Silver City, and I was visiting a friend who had been out of town for 2 months. We just get back, and she's got a leak, and it's been running for about that period of time, 2 months. 500 gallons of hot water a day extra. No one from Silver City notified her by mail or tried to turn the water off on her behalf. or any such thing. So the question was, because it was concerning to me, because that's one of the selling points that you put forth, why would the city want to do something like that? It's extra revenue in their pocket.
Cut yourself into these, right?
That was the answer I got from Silver City.
Right.
We asked them.
That
So
answer.
that, I mean, it depends on our integrity, of course, but that was just I thought it was a funny story, the same system, and we tried to turn it off ourselves. We couldn't do it.
Bad answer
So,
from the city standpoint.
And Mayor, if I may, members of the commission, thank you. My name is Colby Gear. I'm the general manager of Yesco. That was a little bit of a different project. What they installed was an AMR system, so it's an automated meter reading system. It was a drive-by system. They weren't receiving data on a daily basis from that infrastructure. They evaluated both a drive-by and automated fixed-base system as we proposed here, and they chose to go with the drive-by system. So they are still, the savings to them from a human resource perspective is getting out of the car and going directly to that meter. They drive by and it collects the data automatically. So they are still 30 days in the rear. I will say on that system, it's not real time. This system here that we propose is basically 6 to 8 hours in the rear. So you get updates. It downloads from the meter up to the Cisco grid routers and then out to the cloud every 6 hours. And so you're about 6 hours in the rear. In that system, they're still 30 days. They're still subject to their monthly meter readings. And then above and beyond that, it really is up to the city, as Mayor Green had said, to be, I won't say ethical, but to be prompt and responsive to a leak that they may detect somewhere within the system. But the good news is this does give you the data. What you do with that data is once again up to you guys. I would like to address one more thing as well, if you don't mind. There's a question about the leak detection and what happens upstream of the meter and what of that is included in this project. It's difficult for us to manage the system upstream of the meter. We can give you all the data about the water that's flowing through the pipes and how it's being used at the residence or at the commercial building. And when you're using water, how you're using water, what that consumption profile looks like, and we can determine at 2 a.m. for 3 days in a row there's been a quarter gallon going through the meter. We're going to alarm the system to let them know that there's a leak at a faucet or at a toilet or whatever that may be. Everything upstream of that meter is really not detected by the meter itself. So what we've included in this project is a mobile leak detection system as a part of this price, which allows your meter readers, and we're not telling you how to manage your HR, but it would allow the city to take that into their own hands, use the mobile leak detection device, locate where leaks may be happening within your infrastructure, and then allowing you to basically put the future in your own hands to say, this is worth our time. It's a severe enough leak. It may cost us $10,000 to repair, but we know that it's leaking X amount, or we have an idea of what it's leaking, and that's a good cost benefit for us to invest in repair. There's maybe some repairs that cost you $30,000 because you have to cut streets, and it's a big project to repair a leak that's a quarter gallon an hour, and that would in turn not be a viable option, financial option to repair the leak outside of the water conservation. So that would allow you guys to make that determination. Any of those cost savings have not been included in the pro forma, and they're not any savings that we're taking account for. That's just a good practice for us to go ahead and implement that best practice for you. One final thing, in regards to the growth rate, we do have an escalation on the rate itself. So as we project these out, best practices with the state as well is that as you project something for 20 years, try to understand what that growth rate could look like and be conservative with it, but be aggressive enough with it to where the financing is limited, so you're paying the least amount of interest possible. There's once again a cost benefit there. Do we be as conservative as we can, assume zero growth rate on our utility cost, and then extend the financing out to 25 years? There's an impact there as well, right? Because now you're paying financing for an additional 5 years, and your interest rate, I'm not going to speak for Mark, but could be subject to a longer financing term. So you want to be as aggressive as you can, but still have something that's workable for the commission to pass out to the ratepayers, because we get that's a big expense and a big risk as well from your perspective. So you want to balance both of those. The federal government, Federal Energy Management Program, has done studies. Initially, they carried zero escalation in any of their energy performance contracts, thinking that it was the conservative thing to do. And what they found is that they developed a calculator, and carrying a modest amount of escalation maximizes the interest and the financing amount, minimizes that,
but it also doesn't leave money on the table to where you have a surplus every year and you're paying for that long term. So there is a balance there. We would defer to you guys to help determine what that balance looks like. We have followed CPIs in the past, is what we put in some of these. Seeing a 5% increase, we thought 3% was conservative, but that's only on the rate. On the consumption, that's the other piece of it. The consumption, we took a 5% haircut, and that's the value that we used for the entire duration. So we're not saying that consumption is going to increase. We're not anticipating population growth. We're anticipating we're going to do this project, and 5% of your consumption is going to be shaved off the top immediately, just because people are, A, more conscious, B, they have the data at their fingertips. They can see what their consumption profiles look like, and they can hopefully be proactive to conserve water, or at least be more proactive in their management of their water. And then the third is it hits them in the pocketbook, so they may want to be conservative that way. So there's a few soft costs that go in there, but we took a 5% haircut on your consumption increase and carried that value for the entire 20-year pro forma, and then the rate's the only thing that changed. I just want to clarify that as well, because there is two pieces. It's the consumption piece and it's the rate piece. So, thank you.
I'd just like to also point out that from what I'm hearing and what we've experienced in the past with a potential major funder of USDA, if we were, I'm not saying we should or we shouldn't, I'm just putting this out for consideration. If we should go to this project, the way it's being presented to us, and the rate increase is what makes the whole project in its totality work, then in essence we are pledging that rate increase to make this project work. And then when we go to USDA and they say, what are your rates and what rates are available to coming out of your water department that can start to replace, to Commissioner Clark's point, I think you brought this up a couple months ago, $20–30 million. Well, they want to make sure that the rates that we are charging can pay back the loan to redo our pipes. If we were to increase the rates now, in essence, we're pledging that increase to make this project work. And then how are we going to get money for USDA? We have to increase the, again.
If I may,
if I'm wrong here.
Not necessarily. The USDA does not look at it in that manner.
Okay.
You increase rate, but it's dedicated for a specific project. What a lot of the funding agencies, as Tracy reported when she went before the Water Trust Board, they basically just ask, what are your current rates? And if they don't ask what are your outstanding debt is against those rates, against your rates, it's just what is your rates. And the city has not increased its rates in 10 years. We have met with USDA, and they have already told us the same thing as they told Tracy at the Water Trust Board, is compared to other systems are similar size, our rates are low. So if we're going to qualify for any grant funding, then we're going to have to, like we did with the wastewater, increase our rates. But that's what they look at, is if we keeping up with pace on the rate on the rates itself. They don't look at, well, did you specifically pass those rates, because they'll look at what the system is generating. Obviously, if we're going after a $30 million loan, they'll look at, is the system able to handle that kind of a debt?
Right.
But they will not look at, well, did you pledge it for this specific purpose? It's just, what is the system generating, and can it pay for that loan?
All right. Well, thank you for explaining that, because obviously I didn't understand it.
Meeting a couple of years ago when the woman was going through
City
it all.
Senate.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, there was a limit to how much we could raise a year for that particular wastewater project, and it was 5% or less. So your point I'm hearing is if we've got 5% pledged for this, and we need water lines, that cuts that particular type of funding out, because we wouldn't be able to put another 5 on 5.
Well,
is that what I'm hearing you say, Mayor?
Well,
or something like that?
I didn't realize that. See, I thought, and I think that I heard from Magic Winters, and please tell me if I'm going off the rails here. I made the assumption that if we were to raise the rates to make this project happen, that money, you can't use the same money twice. You only can use it once, because if we then would take that 3% and not put it towards this project, but put it towards water line replacement project, then the city loses money on this project. This project is not financially viable. That's what I heard from Alex, that the scope of the project is not financially viable. So I thought, to your point, that the enterprise fund had to stand on its own and be able to pay back the debt. So if you're using the dollar to make this operation work, how can you then use the same dollar to pay down a loan? Because then this operation doesn't work. That was my question.
And a lot of times, for example, with USDA, Mayor Commissioners, if we were to, just for discussion purposes, have our rates at a comparable level to other similar systems, and we have this project and we have other loans already in place,
right,
USDA will look at it and say, well, you've already at least are meeting a certain level of rate structure.
Threshold.
So then that would qualify the city then more for grant money as opposed to loan money.
Right.
But if we're not even there on the rate structure, they look at us and say, you have room to increase your rates,
right,
and you can afford loan, you shouldn't get any grant.
Got it.
So it kind of, in a sense, it works against the city that we do not increase rates and we're not investing in the system.
Right.
So that's just the way they look at it. Just the way Water Trust Board is looking at it is, if you have room, if other communities, as Tracy reported, every community that was going before them was being asked, what are your rates? And they're up there above what we have. And we get to TRC, well, we're way down here. The funding agency looks at us and says, well, you should increase your rates then. And you can afford a loan.
Right. Yeah, I heard we're the lower 10 or 12% of the state,
right,
for water building, for the
And where are we on income?
Very low too.
Right.
Yeah.
But they don't consider it.
Yeah.
But I do.
I do.
All right, any final comments?
You've been quiet.
I'm listening. Commissioner Hessler, I think you just took a big deep breath and you want to ask a question.
Well, I guess I don't want to oversimplify these things too much, but who's to say that we have to take on this entire project at once? If we were able to do part of the project with water and just tackle that part of it, because we're using the water savings basically to pay for all the electric. I guess my question is, since electric is an enterprise entity that generates its own revenue, why can't electric just submit its own upgrades? So
the answer is, sir, unfortunately, because we are the type of community we are, we have to transfer that money to make the general fund make sense.
Well, and it can, and again, I think this was to put the whole package together as one project with electric. And now, I don't know if that's something that can be split up and just, I mean, it's a different procurement, I guess, mechanism if we try to split up both from, I'm just trying to, the logistics of how we could do that.
Well, originally, and thank you, Mayor and Mayor Lieutenant, Commissioners, originally this was a water project. That's what we came in on.
That's right.
And then we had a huge building snafu on the electric side, and we wanted to see if we can put this all together. So we got the request, hey, can we consolidate our billing system so that one billing system does both electric and water? So the way this statute reads is a little bit complicated, because on the electric savings side, the amount of information it takes to do that full auditing, which is like as much as that line setting was, is every year. That's what they require because of the state statute. So we were trying to figure out a way to fund those electric meters within the parameters of the water side, which is why we've been playing with these numbers to try to make this happen. That way, your one reading system is reading electric and reading water. Now, again, we've laid this all out here in an investment grade audit, so you can take a look at what this does. And maybe there is an option that we can explore, in a further meeting. It says, hey, maybe we can phase this in a way so you can get that infrastructure built and the water pays for that. And then we can look at other, funding mechanisms on the electric side. I know that Bo had some rural electric money possibly available out there. But it's, again, the problem with the federal money and the state money it is, we've got a meeting to go to later today, it's zero. There's just nothing out there. And I'm on the State Infrastructure Finance Committee, and it's so absolutely devastating how much money we don't have right now. So we've tried to be creative in how we do this, and I welcome all your questions. I mean, because you're right. I mean, this community is compromised. It's going through some tough times, and we want this to be a positive for the community, not a negative. So we're absolutely willing to take a look at this, any number of ways to make it make sense. Now, the escalation factor that we put in, underperformance contracting, those are numbers that the actual state gives to us to try to keep that in the system. But again, this is on y'all. You're the governing board of this. Even EMRD they'll validate, and the OCE on this one, the State Office of Engineer, they'll validate the audit. But you guys say yes or no. They'll validate those numbers, and that's where it's at right now. Because we wanted to make sure that they were along through this whole process. So that's a third-party verification you get from the OSC. So even though there's some questions on the audit, we have worked with them for months now to show them how this whole process works, and they're pretty impressed with what work we've done in some of the projects on the water side. But we have to make sure that those numbers are very conservative and they meet with your requirements. Down the street, Las Cruces has decided to do this as well, and they're doing 37,000 gas meters and about 30,000 water meters. So they've decided to do it as a performance contract. They were going to self-perform it, but they decided this was the best way to go. So it is happening on the big and small sides here. So the idea of self-performing, believe me, if you guys have the dollars and the people to figure this, to do this, self-performing it, that's the big question all these cities have. These are complicated technical installations, and they are. And again, if that is what works for the city, we've tried to find you that with the help of staff, and staff has been amazing this whole process, and the great data. We got better data out of you guys than we got out of the city of Roswell. I mean, your data was pristinely good. So we got great data. You guys are reading your meters. There are cities out there that, we got great data from you. So the numbers we feel pretty good about. Now, the financing side of it, those are where we have to get creative and see what can make work for the city. And so if an escalation of maybe 1% works or none, we'll work those numbers out. Now, in Silver City's instance, they did not have any escalation on there because they had gone up on their rates for the last 4 to 8 years prior. So they were already sort of in that USDA soft spot already. So they were okay. So, but since your water rates are our load, I know that you've been going after this USDA grants where your rates will have to go up. But again, a part of this project, almost the majority of this project could happen with a lower escalation rate. We would just have to play with scope a little bit differently and see how we could be creative. But we're absolutely willing to do that. So if we want to, come back and rethink that, we're certainly available to do that.
So Scott, and Mark, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but on page 9 of your handout where it says transaction structure, total debt service schedule, and it goes up to 20 years and it ends up at $7,435,100. The contract would guarantee those escalating payments? Is that?
No. Well, Scott, go ahead, answer, and then I'll provide any clarity.
Yes.
So you would buy a performance bond the first year for $288,000, because that's what our debt is. That's what we owe some entity. And the next year you would buy a bond for $305,000. No, it's what I want to understand. How does that work?
Right.
So we don't have to put our hands in our pockets because of the whoops factor.
Right. And there are specific ways. I'll let Colby explain how EMRD has that set up.
Tell me how this guarantee works.
Mayor and Commission, so we do purchase a bond that is a guarantee bond for the duration of the contract, and it's in these numbers. It's already included in the project cost. But that basically says if there is a shortfall in a given year, then that insurance, and for some reason YESCO is not around in year 14 and there's a shortfall, then that bond will pay for the shortfall. That shortfall is obviously driven by a number of calculations that are spelled out in the contract and will be spelled out in the contract and obviously mutually agreed upon. But basically what it says is, we've taken a baseline consumption. That's what we're building all of this on, and we take an accuracy that's based on the AWWA audit that was performed, and then we'll do the same audit every year to test the meters and make sure that they're performing at the levels that we've guaranteed. And that's what the guarantee is based on. That obviously computes back to consumption for that given year and sees what the shortfall, if there was, based on the consumption of that given year. And if there was an inaccuracy in the meter population that we tested, then we pay the difference. So if you come in and our meters reads on year 3 at 96.5% inaccurate, we're now 1% less than what we guaranteed. We will pay the difference to get you the revenue that 97.5% accuracy would have guaranteed.
And that difference might not be what our obligation is for the bond. Is that correct?
It's built around the pro forma of a 5% haircut. Now, if something happens in the future where population decreases or consumption falls off the table, then and the accuracy upholds, that's the driving factor for us in our guarantee. That's correct. Now, but that's why we're conservative in the 5% reduction in consumption and take no escalation. So at bare minimum, we're taking what you're consuming today minus 5%, and that's what we're forecasting as consumption moving forward. That's right. But there is a guarantee bond in the event. Now, if we claim on that bond, if there is a shortfall in a given year, that's up to us. We may write the check, or we may pass it on to the bond company. But there is a protection in place for you guys.
And I guess what I'm not grasping, and I apologize, the guarantee is not for the city's payment. The guarantee is what you project the recaptured revenue, the new captured revenue is going to be. And that number might not necessarily be the same number of our payment, our finance payment back to an entity.
That's a great question.
And that's my concern.
Right. So in the development of these projects, the development of the baseline is really crucial. Understanding how you're using water, or how you're selling your water, and what we kind of anticipate that to look like in the future. So that's a great point. That's what drives this entire financing and our entire pro forma that we've been passed on to Mark to develop the financing. But that's exactly right. We are unable to guarantee the future operations of the city, if you will, or guarantee what necessarily happens with how you consume water. But what we can guarantee is the efficiency and the longevity of the system that we're putting in. That's where we have the responsibility. We're taking the liability as well. So that's what we can guarantee. And then it all translates out into future cost savings or revenue generation, if you will.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Commissioner Heschler.
Yeah, Mr. Winters and Mayor. So procedurally, what do we tackle first? Do we have to provide a rate increase before we approve a project like this, or is the rate increase automatically approved with the approval of this project? Do we tackle these things separately, and how do we deal with that?
Well, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Heschler, I think the idea that just came out on this discussion was if we're going to do a project as a whole, electric and water, then it may require an escalation to make it work. If we're going to separate it, then it may not require that escalation, correct? So it's up to the commission on what direction they like us to proceed forward. If there's if it's going to be as a whole project and we need additional time to look at the numbers, then maybe we can maybe kind of come back and review it as a whole, or are we taking a different approach and separating them? That's really the question right now.
If I may, very nicely done, George, can I ask you a question, please? I'm sorry to keep on doing this to you. So the PUAB is going to be, at some particular point, maybe sooner than later, depending on Commissioner Heschler's question, at a rate increase for water.
That is my understanding, yes.
And I thought I heard 5%, and maybe
Well,
I didn't. And I
okay.
also thought I heard 3%.
Okay.
And what would it be initially, and what do you envision? I realize that you can't speak for your board, but what would you envision the frequency of increases moving forward?
Well, it has been the will of this commission that when we consider the solid waste and the wastewater rates, that we used a 5% increase. Now, the reason that we put 5% increase on it, I don't think we really increased the base rate when we did wastewater. It really didn't go up that much, did it?
It did, yes.
Oh, it did? Okay.
I believe it was an initial almost like 30%?
Was it 30? Okay.
An initial
all right.
30% and then 5% thereafter.
And then 5% up on top. Again, just to kind of, again, the idea there was that, you know, rather than putting in a 60 or 70% increase all at one time, you know, and then saying, okay, we don't have to worry about this for another 10 years or 15 years. The idea was we give that that small initial increase, and we have that 5% additional every year, so we're not all of a sudden, you know, hitting the citizens with this huge rate increase. And I think we did the same logic applied with the solid waste. We do need, and that's one of the reasons that the rate is a little bit more than the consumer price index. Because we do need to catch up, and I envisage doing the same kind of thing with the water rates, giving them a modest rate increase and then an annual percentage increase afterwards. I just used 5% because that's what we have used with the other two utilities. It may be less, it may be more. My opinion, and I've stated this during the commission meetings, is that in order to do what we need to do with our utility systems, I think an annual rate increase of more like 10% is what we really need. But, you know, trying to be considerate of our customers and their situation, where it's been kept down to 5%. But I mean, we see the numbers all the time coming back from the departments on all the work that needs to be done. And the idea there is to bring in that money and have it there, not only to support our position when we're looking for grants or loans, but also to be able to put in a reserve for when, so that we don't have to go out for grants or loans when improvements need to be done in the future.
Thank you, George. So, Mark, your projections were predicated on a 3% rate increase. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's what's in, yes, those numbers.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Anyone want to make a motion? Any concepts?
I make a motion that we send this back to the PUAB board with these current numbers and take a look at what rate increases we could consider if we had to do that,
Okay.
et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure they have what they need to talk about.
I have a motion by Commissioner Clark. Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Motion was to put this information back to the PUAB with information that has come to light, and let them do their due diligence, which they have done in the past, and then bring it back to the City Commission. We have a motion and we have a second by Mayor Pro Tem. Mark, two quick things, and one to Scott. These numbers will hold for how long?
Our interest rate numbers are current market, so, you know, I mean, it could change any day, but we don't see interest rates rising outside of a, you know, normal deviation. So they're generally pretty strong for the next 6 months.
Okay, and Scott, or whoever wants to answer, how about YESCO's numbers? So at least, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get back to the PUAB the numbers that are going to be brought back to this commission in a timely fashion, but I don't want to push them because they're our boots on the ground. that we don't have to start all over again because numbers have changed because such a long period of time has expired. So how long will you stand by these numbers?
And that's a great question, Mayor and Commission. So, just so everyone's clear, we have the haircut Mark was talking about as well was not just on escalation, but it was on our fees as well. And Mark, maybe you can talk to this, but the number did not go up. It came down 5.8%. So what they've already reviewed is 5.8% more expensive than this number here. So it's only gotten better. I can say that we went out for repricing again last week or 2 weeks ago when we were working on these revised numbers. Usually those are good for about 60 days if we can push the suppliers to there. So no longer than that, but we can probably hold them up to 90 days at this price. But the number did not go up. The number has come down since what they've reviewed.
So you wait for 120 days because the numbers come down even more? just asking. But I wanted to get a framework of time here that I don't want to kill staff if they need additional information. I don't want to put the PUAB under any more stress. And we would like to come to I would like to come to some type of a conclusion since we're going on 3 years since the first presentation of this project. And I want to give my fellow commissioners every bit of information to make the best decision for our citizens in this community. Commissioner Clark.
I have one question. Would it be possible to get a breakout of the construction fees for my PUAB board?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. So when you're referring to construction fees, are you talking about the above the pre-construction fees in this section here, or are you talking about all of these for performance bond, construction management, all that?
These are pretty straightforward. It's this one right here.
Okay, so you want to see labor and materials broken out, basically, is what you're requesting. Okay. Yeah, you bet.
No, this is going to be it. That was presented to us at the last meeting. On the one previous meeting, all we did get was that subcontractor fee. We did ask for a breakout on that, including the prices on the meters and and everything broken.
Here, material and labor. It's what's contained in this one.
That's right. That's this number right here.
This is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that is that number.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the breakout.
Got it.
And we did get that, but you said that's about 5.8% lower.
6% lower than what it was last time. But yes, that is all of them broken out by meter size, electric and gas, electric and water.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark, I just want to make sure, I'm going to ask you again for your clarification. Madam, I just want to make sure. So the PUAB is hearing what we're once again asking of them, that staff once again hears what we're asking of them, and my fellow commissioners, when it comes back to us, we're asking them to look at the project that we are talking about right now, which is the YESCO project. Is that I don't want to hear, unless you want to change your motion. Okay. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm not hearing, let's look at leases. I'm not hearing, let's look at loans from the bank. I'm hearing this.
Yeah,
and
with a specific that they can look at these figures again.
Right.
And that they look at what they would feel comfortable presenting to the public as a rate increase if we needed to do it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that's kind of like part of the motion, so that because I don't want to face these two gentlemen and the other people from the PUAB or the folks from YESCO when it comes back to us before 90 days, and we say, no, we thought you understood.
Well, and the other thing, Mayor, is that, in addition to looking to this, they could come back and say, we've looked at this, we've looked at the rate increases, we've got another option.
Right.
And it wouldn't be necessarily financing, it could be like, how would we do it?
Well, I don't want to go on a wild goose chase.
No, let's stay specific to this.
Those cats. Okay, that's.
I would say this is Commissioner Becker asked a great question. We're talking about the rate increase, like implementing ordinances.
Right. So that's all the things that
was a legal issue. That comes to my mind.
Absolutely. Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Clark. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Is there any further discussion, concerns, or points that anyone would like to make? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries unanimously. Let the record show that. Thank you very much. The next item is report, city manager.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, city attorney.
I have no report either. I haven't seen this report that way at 1 o'clock, so if there are questions for me or anything else, or something else, I'd like to excuse myself.
Absolutely, I have no problem with that unless any commissioner has a problem with that.
No? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Reminder, the next meeting is November 15th at 2 o'clock.
Mark, thank you. Whoops.
I just want to make sure that's on the record.
Right, okay. Mayor Pro Tem,
No report.
Commissioner Hessler,
No, sir, no report.
Commissioner Clark,
I'm sorry.
any reports? No problem. Any reports?
Yeah, my report is I just found out that we couldn't have approved this today anyway without having a rate increase already in place. Thank you, Commissioner Hessler. You did that. Good poll.
Commissioner Frankel? No report. Okay, I'm going to be really quick because we have an executive session. Andy from Solid Waste asked me to remind everyone that the Solid Waste Collection Center and the recycling yard is closed on November 4th on Saturday and will be reopened again on November 6th for just routine maintenance. I want to thank Commissioner Clark for taking the lead on the F-16 Holloman Air Force Base that we've been working on. She wrote a brilliant letter. Thank you. It's in the mail, and I appreciate all the comments from my fellow commissioners and the comments from the public. I think we made a pretty strong statement. Just FYI, I heard through a very reliable grapevine that 2 of our spas have lost pressure and maybe temperature. So what we did is the commission contacted Billy Elbrock, who is in charge of our BOR facility here. It was pointed out that the dam was a little bit lower than it has been last year. He was aware of it. There's water running over that dam like a waterfall rather than trickling through it, and he's going to do boots on the ground and will report back to us if that is the problem. Very quickly, I want to thank the Solid Waste Department under Andy and his team and the Bountiful Alliance Recycling Committee. We had a fun little visit with students who were involved in the Envirothon. We went to the high school and we had a yard sale last year, and we are going to have another yard sale, the Bountiful Alliance Recycling Committee, November 11th from 8 to 1 o'clock. And part of the proceeds of that recycling of the yard sale will go to help support the students in their Envirothon. As you know, we came in 3rd in the country, and they were against some pretty heavyweight schools, and that is awesome. So, George, thank you for being there with me, and Suzanne Karlstadt, thank you if you're in earsight. And the other thing is I wanted to thank Rotary. If you haven't have a chance, walk around when we leave out back or go through that door. Rotary funded the shade on the patio for the seniors. It kind of looks like a small...
Tables and chairs.
And the tables and chairs, I beg your pardon. A double thanks to Rotary. I didn't realize it was the tables and chairs. And that's awesome. I mean, what a wonderful organization. And so Steve Buckley told me about this on Friday when we did the ribbon cutting for the brewery. So thank Rotary, thank you, and Renee, thank you, and Josh, thank you, and all your fellow Rotarians. Certainly adds a new quality of life to being a senior, which I am, here in our wonderful town. And that is the end of my report. Do we need a motion to go into executive session? I will stand for such.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into executive session under item G2, limited personnel matters, city manager annual evaluation, pursuant to 1015-1H2.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem. I need a second. Second by Commissioner Frankel. Any further discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Green?
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead?
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Hessler?
Yes.
Honorable Kathy
Bless.
Clark?
Aye.
Honorable Joshua Frankel?
Present.
Carries unanimously. Let's take a 3-minute break while the hall empties out. Bless you.